Good afternoon. Welcome to the special council meeting of Tuesday, January 27, 2026 at 4:50 p.m. in council chambers and a lot of electronic participation. We're going to call to order and have a moment of silence. Item number 2, land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the town of Kirkland Lake is located on traditional and unceded territory of Indigenous peoples. We recognize the presence of these Indigenous people in our community since time immemorial and honor their stewardship and care of these lands. We hereby affirm our continued commitment and responsibility to reconciliation. Item number 3, approval of the agenda, moved by Councillor Shava, seconded by Councillor Ranger.
Be it resolved that the agenda for the special meeting of council held on Tuesday, January 27th, 2026 be approved as circulated, and finally that in accordance with subsection 4A 4.2 and subsection 4C 4.2 of council's procedural bylaw 25062 that a recess take place after the initial presentation of item 8.1 reports from municipal officers and staff in order to hold a committee of the whole meeting to receive staff presentations and discussions in relation to the 2026 mayor's budget and 3-year capital plan as presented.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. As noted, this does require a vote of 2/3 and it is recorded. So Madam Clerk will proceed.
Procedural vote for recess and special council to go with committee of the whole. Councillor Dykens is absent. Councillor Kylie?
Yay.
Councillor Rick Owen?
Yay.
Councillor Casey Owens?
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Janice Ranger?
Yay.
Councillor Rod Chava?
Yay.
Mayor Stacy White?
Yay.
The vote is carried.
Thank you. Item number 4, declaration of pecuniary interest. None noted at the table at this time. Item number 5, civic petitions. There are none this evening. Item number 6, delegations and presentations. We'll be joined tonight for item 6.1 by several members of the OPP, moved by Councillor Ranger, seconded by Councillor Rick Owen.
Be it resolved that the presentation entitled Ontario Provincial Police 2026 budget presentation be received for information purposes.
Thank you, and we'll now welcome from the OPP for the 2026 budget presentation, Sergeant Kathleen Ross, Municipal Policing Specialist, who will be joined in chambers by Detachment Commander Ron Belfoy and Acting Detachment Commander James Marcotte, as well as online. We're going to be welcoming Teresa Paulson, Financial Analyst, Municipal Policing Unit. Thank you very much. You may proceed.
Thank you very much for having us. We're here to speak and take questions about the OPP budget, cost recovery, and local costs. Before we move into the presentation, a copy of Kirkland Lake's 2026 annual billing statement was provided. It will be helpful to have handy to reference. It is a detailed 22-page document with a breakdown of the costs and calls for service for your municipality. It also contains notes, definitions, and information that plainly explain the data. Our team works very hard to ensure there are resources within the document. A webinar was just held recently. I understand some of you had the opportunity to attend. That explained not only the bill, but trends, discounts, and questions available to anyone on OPP.ca. There are also many resources and comparative documents on our internet site I encourage everyone to visit. The Municipal Policing Unit, Tracy and I specifically here today, to take on the role of explaining how and why the OPP collect data and apply a model for the cost recovery. It is important to note that we are guided by legislation and that the ministry provides directions on decisions and discounts. We understand that discounts have been and continue to be at the front of our minds as policing costs have increased. The ministry applied a 10% discount to all OPP policed municipalities' bills in 2025. This was applied to everything except year-end adjustments and enhancements. Kirkland Lake does not have any enhancements. This was, in essence, to absorb the impact of the costs for the ratified collective agreement. This year, an 11% cap was applied the same way, which positively impacted Kirkland Lake and will be discussed today on slide 7. We do not have information or direction for discounts for 2027. Next slide, please. We are covering today, as I mentioned, the OPP budget as a whole, municipal cost recovery generally, and for your municipality. I'll highlight provincial resources, how they assist your local detachment, and how they impact costs. We will discuss the OPP billing model discounts and factors contributing to cost recovery increases, and finish with questions. Next slide, please. The OPP budget in 2024, which is the last reconciled year, was $1,847,000,000. We see here broken down by command areas within the OPP, consistent with our annual report. I'd mentioned that we have 6,400 uniform members, 2,900 civilian members, and 530 dedicated auxiliary members. We cover over 1 million square kilometers of land and water. To note, it's a large operation, so these impacts are large sometimes when we talk about cost recovery. The OPP budget is determined through a combination of factors including salaries and benefits, which comprise about 83%. The OPP does not have direct control over this and is negotiated through the ministry in our OPP association. Comparing this to approximately 17% for such things as direct operating expenses, capital projects such as aviation, we have facility repairs, lots of information technology, vehicles and specialty equipment. This percentage breakdown, and I want to highlight, is consistent with other police agencies in Ontario and Canada. And is common to many professions that require the intense use of available human resources to meet their mandates. Next slide, please. Municipal cost recovery. The OPP is legislated under the Community Safety and Policing Act to recover costs for municipal policing. Cost recovery is based on determining most of the municipal costs to be recovered on a provincial level, and then allocating those costs to municipalities based on proportionate shares of property counts and calls for service activity. These are the two main areas you'll see on your bill, and we will talk about shortly. We see here on the slide, the main areas recovered are detachment staff, support positions such as communication operators, uniform recruitment, IT support, and other direct operating expenses. In 2024, which is the last reconciled year, was $428 million. We'll take that, we'll fast forward to 2026. The cost increased to an estimated, before discount, $527.4 million. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, each municipality pays a base service, which is the first point on the slide here. Cost per property, depicted in dark tan on the graphic, $203 million. Base services, I like to describe it as a bricks and mortar charge. If we think of everything is required to support, to have a trained officer available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, show up at a call, fully equipped, to provide effective service to members of your community, and everything attached behind them to make it all work, it's shared equally throughout the province at a per property cost. So for 2026, just to highlight, for all properties in the province, it's $203. Calls for service, $181 million, depicted here in light tan. Calls for service cost for your municipality is a proportionate share of the total cost of municipal calls for service cost calculated for the province. A municipality's proportionate share of the cost is based on a weighted time standard applied to historical billable calls for service, which we average over 4 years. The municipality's total weighted time is calculated as a percentage of the total of all municipalities. So we think of base services as proactive policing in general terms, such as a ride program per se. Calls for service we consider, most people think of as just reactive calls. So you call the police, we respond and investigate. I'd like to note that a list of billable calls for service calls can be found on opp.ca. There are also many we do not cost recover for. Time standards are an average, how long it takes an officer to complete a particular type of call. And we break those down into 9 kind of digestible billing working groups, and we'll see them on the bill that we've provided, to which we then apply a time standard, the average amount of time it takes to complete the contract. Next slide. Actually, could you hold out? I apologize. Other represents overtime, court security, prisoner transportation, and accommodation. A brief mention on historical trends. Over a 7-year period, 2020 to 2026, which is what our recent webinar covered, total recovers under the OBP billing model have grown moderately. The 2026 estimate is 26% higher than the 2020 reconciled costs. This is an average annual increase of 4.3% over 7 years. However, because of the 2023 to 2026 collective agreement was not ratified until 2024, most of the impact of these increases has been realized in the last 2 years. We are also returning to pre-pandemic calls for service counts and court activity. We underestimated costs in both 2023 and 2024, leading to substantial year-end reconciliation adjustments being applied in addition to annual salary increases ratified for 25. Thank you. Next slide. Shown on the slide here are some provincial resources, policing services that are considered the provincial responsibilities. It's important to note the OPP does not cost recover for provincial resources. I would also like to highlight 2 points at the bottom of the slide, which are unincorporated territories and Indigenous policing. I want to highlight we do not cost recover for those. Those are common questions that we get asked by municipalities. The salary, benefit, support, and other direct operating expenses associated with members performing these activities on a full-time basis are completely excluded from the annual cost recovery process. Also excluded is overtime for these members. Additionally, cost reductions are applied to reflect the portion of each municipal detachment's workload attributable to provincial responsibilities, as well as the temporary assignment of individual members to provincial duties. So if a member in your detachment, they perform both municipal and provincial work. These services support detachments, provide critical expertise and scaled responses to calls. I always like to think of missing persons calls where time is really critical. It's essential that we're scalable. This is basically the heart of our integrated service delivery model. One call for service would be registered for the municipality from a cost recovery lens, with the potential for some overtime for officers in your area as required and authorized through supervisory staff in your detachment. Next slide. Thank you. So as we near the end of my short, concise presentation, here is a copy of the face or page 1 of your annual billing statement for 2026. Just visually walking through it, you'll see some of the points that I spoke about. So we see base services section. So we see your property counts for household, commercial, and industrial. We get that from MPAC data at 4,895. The 2026 base services amount is $203 times your properties, or approximately $993,000. As we move down the face of the bill, calls for service. 2026 used an average of the years 2021 to 24, times by that average time standard for each of those 9 billing working groups, for a total weighted time, then converted to a percentage of your provincial total weighted time converted to your dollar figure. And that can be located on page 5 of your bills. We do see the other line items here for court security, for prisoner transportation, which I'll mention is a per property cost. We all use it in the province, so we all take a share of that, and accommodation and cleaning, a year-end adjustment with a summary explanation. That then leads us to the calculated amount of $3.7 million. That amount has been capped, which brings Kirkland Lake's estimated bill to $3.3. Next slide. We want to thank Madam Mayor, Council, members of the community, and media for having us here today for a brief, short, and concise explanation. I am available to you, anyone in your community, by cell phone, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have today and moving through the future.
Thank you very much. I just want to personally thank Sergeant Ross. This is not something that we normally do. So this is the first time that we have been able to welcome a member such as yourself to give this presentation during our budget deliberations. And I think it was very important. You can't go into the weeds this evening, but it is a really excellent general overview, high level, for not only the members at this table, but for the entire community watching at home and who will watch this broadcast later. So I do appreciate that. Saying that, any questions from members of council? Councillor Shava?
Yeah, thank you, to Madam Mayor, to the presenter. I just want to know this total of municipalities. What are we talking about? Municipalities in our area, or are we talking about? I don't understand that. What municipalities are we talking about?
It's all the municipalities that the OPP police, which is approximately
In Ontario.
330 in the province.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you.
Councillor Owen?
Yes, through you, your worship. You'll have to bear with me because I'm a little bit slow when it comes to numbers. And this calls for service thing, I don't fully understand. And if it's the way I think it is, I have concerns. I look after a building in town where we've had some minor occurrences. And I reported them to the police because I think it's important they know that these minor things are going on in certain neighborhoods. Now that I see we're paying for calls for service, I am very reluctant to report any more of these minor infractions in that neighborhood. So when we're talking calls for services, are we talking just in Kirkland Lake, or are we talking an average of the province? Like, that's the part I don't understand. Like, does it make a difference if I call or if I don't call?
Could you clarify a difference in how?
In what we're charged?
So
The municipality,
from a-
because I'm sitting here as a counselor now, not as a person who's looking after a church. And I'm going, well, that was they stole solar lights, big deal, right? It's not a big deal. But it's on the edge of a neighborhood where there are higher crime rates.
Perhaps we'll start, then I'll lean over to my local detachment member.
But are we charged, like, does
So,
that affect the amount that we're billed? That's what I'm trying to get at.
so there's a list of billable calls for service on our website. So you're talking specifically about theft.
Yeah, minor theft, under 5,000.
So it would be, I could and should double check. However, theft primarily, I believe, is a billable call for service. I'll make a comment, and I think that the more we know is happening in our community, the better we can respond to it. And I think, in general terms, we're all concerned with public safety. And that if we have information, then we can devise strategies to make our communities safer. It would be in the lower priority, I think, an operational 1 or an operational 2 category, which is a very minor time standard. So when we look at those associated time standards, when we, again, just kind of convert it to dollars and cents, it's a very, very low threshold. So without being able to put a dollar amount on it, I think the benefit would outweigh the risk, in my opinion, and I'll just leave it over to the attachment for any comment.
I just want to make one comment before. The OPP responded, they were very good, but I have no complaints with the service. I'm just concerned about, am I costing residents money over a solar light? You know what I mean? It's a $20 light or a $50 light,
Yeah, and I appreciate the question as well, and I think if we were to look into how the billing model is divided up, that the individual call for service would have a very negligible impact on the bill at the end, because it's a percentage of the calls for service throughout the province divided by your percentage of calls for service against the weighted scale. So it's a bit complex in its makeup. But like, Sergeant Ross is saying that that individual call would have a very minor, time limit, therefore it would be a negligible impact on your bill. I think the important piece for the community to know is, yes, we need to know what's going on in the community, and if you feel that something requires a police response, you've had something stolen from you, that we're not worried about the individual call for service, is that you feel that police should be aware, or you would like police to perhaps do what we can with the information, perhaps solve it, call, then by all means call.
And I apologize, I didn't mean to cut anyone off. I think, Tracy, was there anything to add from a cost recovery perspective?
No, you've pretty much covered it all, Kat. It's a minimal call for service. There would not be a ton of time allocated to that, so it would not affect your weighted billing because those are averaged over 4 years to kind of iron out any spikes. So that would not be something that would drive the cost recovery up.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kylie, and then I'll come back to you.
Through you, your worship, sort of a two-pronged question. How many officers do we have in the detachment for Kirk Lake alone?
The complement for the detachments, I believe we're sitting at 42 constables, 5 sergeants, currently under the service delivery model. So under the service delivery model, it was the provinces restructured what they felt adequate staffing would be for all the municipalities. And so out of that came an increase in staffing levels, coupled with a lot of data, which also includes, of course, increased calls for service, which have occurred over the trend over the last year, whatever years. So Kirkland Lake was awarded additional staffing for court operations, which is a civilian side. We were also awarded additional frontline. We were one additional frontline supervisor and an additional constables. So, yeah.
Follow-up question. The municipal portion per household is $435.39. How does that fit in with other communities, say our size? Is that high or low?
I'm just gonna hand that over to my colleague at
Okay.
General Headquarters in Aurelia. Tracy, could you hear that question?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I missed that.
On the municipal portion for calls for service, how many, we were at $435 per household.
Yes.
I'm just curious whether that's high or low for a community our size.
It's about middle ground. It's not considered high, but it's not as low as certain other communities. But you're right in the middle. So I'm not, you're definitely not on the high end, but I wouldn't speculate that you're on the low end either. So it's just dependent on that. The calls for service are weighted per property for individual areas. So Kirkland Falls would be pretty much your area. That's what we analyze the data for. And if you look on your bill, you can see on, it starts, the analytics for the years of weighted calls for service start from 2021, and those start on page 7. And you can go through the bill and kind of see the breakdown of how those calls for service are allocated. And that's how we decipher what that cost per property is for the specific area.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Welcome. You're welcome.
To Councillor Owen.
Yes, through you, your worship. Now, if I heard right, and I have to be careful to use the right term here, unincorporated, as opposed to unorganized, because I don't want to insult anybody, don't pay directly for policing, but they do pay taxes. So is money taken out of their taxes to cover the policing costs?
Tracy, do you have any information on that? So
I'm sorry, I do not. I have not had any exposure to the unincorporated billing, unfortunately. But if you would like more information on that, you can email us and I can speak to my colleagues about it. Our senior analyst was unable to attend this evening, but she would know the answer to that. So if you would like an answer to that, please give us an email and we can dig into that for you.
Thank you.
so within our scope as well, we can just comment that it doesn't come out of municipal cost.
Yeah, no, but I'm just trying to figure out, because I have used the OPP in an unincorporated area. And I wouldn't want to see that build back, like, to incorporated.
Right, and that's not, I can confirm that is not the case.
Yeah, and I can just touch on how that's collected is every call for service is given a location. And so where that location is generated determines where the billing would land. So if the call is generated in an organized township, then the duty location for that area would be associated there, not the municipality.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from member of council? Nothing noted. Again, Sergeant, thank you very much for traveling all this way to give such a good briefing. And I know you've offered in the future, if we feel like we need a more fulsome explanation, they are more than willing to come and kind of brief us on the whole package. So, which is a brilliant offer, and I'm sure we will take you up on it. So thank you very much for your time. And you have a good evening and travel safe when you get on the road again. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. We do appreciate your input.
Thank you.
And Teresa, thank you for being online.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Does anyone need the recommendation reread? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None noted. Item carried. Moving on to item 6.2, District of Timiskaming Social Services Administration Board 2026 budget presentation. This will be presented by Mark Stewart, Chief Administrative Officer, and Janice Larange, Director of Finance, moved by Councillor Casey Owens and Councillor Shaba.
Be it resolved that the presentation entitled District of Timiskaming Social Services Administration Board 2026 budget presentation be received for information purposes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. Mr. Stewart, we do appreciate your time, both of you, and you may proceed.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Thank you for inviting us this evening. I'm Mark Stewart, Chief Administrative Officer of the District of Timiskaming Social Services Administration Board, or easily said, DSAB. I'm joined by our Director of Finance, Janice Larange. And this evening, we want to give you a clear understanding of three things: how the 2026 budget was developed, what are the driving numbers this year, and how our services support residents here in Kirkland Lake and across the district. Our board approved this budget last week on January 17th after its full review process that began in October. Like municipalities, we approached our budget with discipline and focused on our legislative services, effective use of available resources in the best interest of our clients and our patients, and maintaining stability in the programs that our residents rely on. Janice and I will walk you through the key elements and happy to answer any questions at the end. Next slide, please. As a quick recap, our DSAB is one of 10 boards across the north who were formed under the DSAB Act. We deliver 4 major programs on behalf of the province and our 23 member municipalities in our 2 territories of municipal organization. Those programs are Ontario Works, Childcare and Early Years, Community Housing and Homelessness Prevention, Paramedic Services, which also includes community paramedicine. Our mandate is district-wide and our goal is simple: reliable, consistent services available to every community. Tonight we'll focus less on how we're structured, more of how our work connects to your residents and the local budget. Next slide, please. Our board includes 9 representatives from across the district, including 2 from Kirkland. This ensures that local perspectives are part of our oversight and decisions. Our budget process follows a structured path. Departments build their budgets. The board reviews each service in detail through the fall, providing you with direction throughout. The final budget is approved in January, ensuring apportionments are communicated to each municipality before March 31st in alignment with regulation. This keeps decisions evidence-based, financially responsible, and aligned with our responsibility to maintain services across the district. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Janice, who will walk you through how we're funded, how the apportionment works, and what it means to Kirkland Lake this year.
Next slide, please. For 2026, our total expenditures amount to over $44.5 million. And these are funded by the sources shown here on this slide. Over 70% of our costs are funded by the provincial and federal governments. The rental revenues of just over $3 million help to offset the costs of our housing program. And the municipalities and unincorporated townships fund approximately 22.5% of our costs, and therefore play a very important role in supporting the services in our communities. Next slide, please. For Kirkland Lake, after deducting all of their funding sources, the remaining costs are divided among all municipalities in our district using a consistent formula. In 2026, Kirkland Lake's share of our $44.5 million budget is $1,903,738, but that has been reduced by using approximately $76,000 of DSAB reserves, for a final 2026 billing amount of $1,827,636. This is an increase of $70,499, or 4.01% over the 2025 final billing amount. In recent years, DSAB has been using reserves to help with funding pressures while still maintaining necessary services. Next slide, please. The apportionment for each municipality is calculated using 4 factors. The first factor is adjusted assessment, which is obtained directly from MPAC each year and adjusted by removing exempt properties and payments in lieu and reducing farmland, managed forests, and vacant excess properties. The second factor is population, which is obtained from Statistics Canada census information. And the third factor is number of households, which is also obtained from Statistics Canada census information. And the fourth factor is Ontario Works caseloads, which is calculated internally by DSAB based on information from the ministry's database. This formula is a systematic and balanced formula that is meant to reflect financial capacity and service demand. Next slide, please. The total DSAB budget for 2026 is $44,553,000, which is actually a decrease of 5.36% compared to prior year. And I have handed out some sheets on the details of the budget, just for your information. Our budget includes expenditures from our 4 main programs: Children's Services, Paramedic Services, Housing Services, and Ontario Works, and also includes administration costs of operating these programs. The expenditures for 2026 have decreased compared to prior year, mainly due to decreased funding allocations in our Children's Services program and a projected decrease in our Ontario Works caseloads. These portions of the programs are funded entirely by the province, so do not have a direct impact on the municipal share of expenses. So despite the decrease in the provincially funded areas, there are continued cost pressures in our budget. These include increased costs of training, staffing, and equipment in our paramedic services program, inflationary pressures in all of our programs, and particularly in our housing operations, increasing salary costs each year, primarily tied to our collective agreements, and frequent changes to our government funding sources, resulting in the need to realign our expenditures. For 2026, there are no new discretionary programs or service expansions beyond legislated mandates. And as always, we ensure that our budget is in compliance with the DSAB Act, the Ontario regulation, and the board-approved policies. I'm gonna turn it back over to Mark for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Jamie. So management actions. As we move on, I want to briefly outline how we manage operations to keep things steady. So first, we focus on sound financial management, keeping a close eye on grants and one-time funding opportunities, monitoring our cost pressures, tracking trends, and making small adjustments earlier so they don't become bigger problems later. Second, we are careful with our reserves. We maintain our working fund reserve within legislative and board-approved policy, maintaining a 1 to 2 month operating reserve. Each spring, after our external audit, we review all reserve levels, bring recommendations to the board, and keeps our reserve healthy, transparent, and appropriate. Third, we look for efficiencies wherever we can, procurement, shared resources, and administrative improvements. These are practical, incremental steps that help stretch every dollar. Our flexibility is in how we deliver services, not whether we deliver them. Finally, we maintain open communication with our ministries, our board, municipalities, and partners. When pressures change, we surface them early, plan together. These practices don't remove all pressure, but they help us manage responsibly and keep essential services stable across the district. Next slide, please. Residents. The DSAB work touches daily life in every community we serve, including Kirkland Lake. And I want to highlight what this looks like on the ground. Ontario Works helps residents experiencing temporary financial hardship stabilize, access benefits, move towards employment, or facilitate their application to the Ontario Disability Support Program. Our Children's Services in Early Years provide funding and system oversight for licensed childcare providers and early on programming, helping families access reliable and affordable childcare. Community Housing and Homelessness Prevention supports our tenants, manages rental agreements, building repairs, and works with community partners when residents are facing housing challenges or crises. Our paramedic services, including community paramedicine, provides 24/7, 365-day-a-year emergency response and helps seniors and vulnerable residents remain safely at home longer. These programs support people in every stage of life, and they're delivered consistently across our district, with municipal contributions forming the local share of the broader system. Next slide, please. Risks and uncertainties. As with any large human service organization, there are pressures we monitor each year. Provincial program changes and funding timing can influence planning, especially when annual allocations are confirmed later, sometimes 1 year at a time, or when program requirements shift under provincial direction. Economic factors can drive our plans. Inflation, fuel, utilities, insurance, contracted services, and building material. Wage adjustments through collective bargaining also create predictable annual increases. Community needs to evolve. Paramedic services may experience growing demand tied to our aging population and more complex health needs. Housing pressures shift with rental availability, the local housing market, and community supports. And Ontario Works caseloads may rise or fall with local employment conditions. Operational dependencies also affect us. Hospitals, community agencies, housing providers, and childcare operators all influence demand on DSAP services when they experience capacity challenges. Supply chain conditions continue to affect our vehicle procurement, medical equipment, and building materials. We monitor all these pressures and communicate them early to our board. Next slide. In closing, 3 points. First, this is a responsible balanced budget that keeps essential services operating reliably. Second, the municipal apportionment model is consistent and data-driven. It's applied equally across all municipalities. And third, every dollar in this budget supports programs that our residents rely upon, from emergency response to housing, childcare, to income support. We value our relationship with council and we remain committed to open communication throughout the year. We provide our quarterly reports and we're always available to provide you with information and emerging issues. And with that, Mayor and members of council, Janice and I will be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before I open the table for discussion, I just want to thank the both of you for coming. I know this is something unique that hasn't happened in our community before, but I do think it is very important for those members at the table that are unable to be in the room at your board member meetings, as well as members of the public that will view this to get a better understanding of how your budgets work at a high level, of course, because we can't get into the weeds. And just to understand the services and how very valuable those services are to our community members. So thank you for being here this evening. That being said, any questions from members of council? Councillor Kylie.
Through your worship, just a comment. Mark and Janice, I gotta say, I've been on this board for 8 years. I'm sure Rick will agree with me. Rick is another board member. It's a finely tuned operation, very well run. I think a lot of it was to do with your leadership. So my compliments to you and Janice for the job that you do, and certainly from a budget standpoint, I think you've been very fair with the community's concerns as well, from a financial standpoint and service delivery, so well done.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Owen.
Yes, through you, your worship. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I have been a thorn in Janice's side for the last few years and pushing to use reserves. And that goes way back to the days when I was a reporter, and mayor and council specifically asked me to go to a DSAP meeting as they were fighting to try and get some of the reserves returned, which we have had in recent, believe it was last year. But I want to give a word of warning. We can only go so far in counting on using the reserves. This is not bottomless where we can keep grabbing reserves and using them to decrease the municipal portion. Eventually, we will not be able to take reserves because there are provincial regulations that says we have to have X amount in reserves. And there's also a board policy which states we have to have 2 months operating in reserves, right? 2 months, or is it 3?
Minimum one.
Minimum 1, maximum 2. And we have to take those in. So I'm very pleased that I didn't even have to ask to use reserves this year. And Janice had drawn out all these different recommendations. But I think in the end, the board decided what was fair for the municipality. I also want to point out, as I have in the past, this is more for the public than council, that when Pat and I are sitting on the DSAB board, we are DSAB board members first and municipal councillors second. And that can be a very difficult balancing act. We are there because we represent the town, and we are there to do what is in the town's best interest. But overriding that, we're not there to do what's in the town's best interest if it's not in DSAB's best interest. So it's a constant balancing act, and I think Pat and I have managed it pretty well. And I just want to, the budget process was so smooth. They got it down pat. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those statements. Any questions from council? Nothing more noted. Thank you very much to both of you. We do really appreciate your time.
Thank
You're
you.
very valuable.
I'll be staying for the meeting, so if there's any questions one-on-one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Do you members require the recommendation be read over? Nope. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None noted. Item carried unanimous. Item number 6.3, Tech Centennial Public Library 2026 budget presentation. This will be presented by Cheryl Lafreniere, Library Chief Executive Officer, moved by Councillor Ranger, seconded by Councillor Owen. Councillor Rippon.
Be it resolved that the presentation entitled Tech Centennial Public Library 2026 budget presentation be received for information.
Thank you. Welcome, Cheryl. You may begin your presentation.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Cheryl Lafreniere, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Tech Centennial Public Library. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight and for taking time to listen and engage as we look toward our 2026 budget. I'm grateful for the chance to speak with you about a service that continues to inform, connect, and support our community every single day, and that's your public library. Next slide. Well, to begin, I'd like to share a snapshot of how our community used the library over the past year. So in 2025, your library welcomed 29,590 in-person visits. These are not passive visits. They represent people coming through our doors for access to information, connection, learning, and support. We also are proud to welcome 319 new members this year. Each new library card represents a resident choosing the library as a trusted resource, whether that's a child discovering reading, a job seeker updating a resume, or a senior looking to stay connected in the digital world. Our collection continues to be actively used with 28,356 items checked out. This reflects ongoing demand for books, movies, audiobooks, and other material that support literacy, education, and lifelong learning. There was also 7,324 digital items checked out using our Libby app. Access to technology remains one of the library's most critical roles. In 2025, our public computers were used 1,536 times, supporting everything from job applications and online forms to schoolwork and government services. Beyond access, our staff provided 394 instances of one-on-one technology assistance. These moments often involve helping residents navigate emails, smartphones, online banking, healthcare portals, and essential digital services. Assistance that many people in our community simply cannot access elsewhere. We offer 240 children's programs with over 6,034 children participating, and we offer 17 adult programs with 335 participants. Together, these numbers tell a clear story. The library is not just a place people visit. It is a service people rely on. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the value of the library, it's important to understand that we are far more than a place to borrow books. At our core, we provide circulation of materials and interlibrary loan service, ensuring residents have access not only to our own collection, but to resources from across the province, expanding opportunity regardless of where someone lives. We support literacy at every stage of life through early literacy resources, readers advisory service, and ongoing book club support that fosters connection, conversation, and lifelong learning. The library also offers a growing library of things, park passes, and access to settlement worker, helping reduce financial barriers and supporting newcomers as they build their lives in our community. Technology access and support remain a critical service. We provide free public internet, wireless access, digital collections, printing, scanning, faxing, and laminating, as well as hands-on technology support for residents navigating an increasingly digital world. Education and engagement are central to our mission. We deliver STEAM education, class visits, and offer a wide range of in-person programs that support curiosity, creativity, and learning beyond the classroom. Just as importantly, the library serves as a safe, welcoming community space. We provide meeting rooms, public washrooms, and we function as a cooling and warming station, offering comfort and safety during extreme weather, services that are especially vital for vulnerable populations. Taken together, these services reflect a library that responds to real community needs. We are a place of access, support, learning, and belonging. And for many residents, the library is not an option, it's essential. Next slide, please. I'd also like to take a moment to clarify how the library is governed and how it fits with the municipal framework. Public library service in Ontario is free by law and is governed by the Public Libraries Act, which sets out clear expectations to access, accountability, and oversight. The public library is overseen by a library board that acts as a governance board, not an operational one. Our board derives its authority directly from the Public Libraries Act and is responsible for setting policy, providing strategic direction, and ensuring the library fulfills its mandate to the community. Our board is made up of 6 members of the public, along with 2 representatives from the municipal council, ensuring both community voice and municipal alignment are built into our governance structure. The board appoints a chief executive officer to oversee day-to-day library operations and the hiring and supervision of library staff. This structure provides clear accountability while allowing professional management of library services. Finally, it's important to acknowledge that the municipality and its library is the library's primary funder. We recognize this responsibility and take stewardship of public funds seriously. Our board and staff work intentionally to ensure that every dollar invested delivers meaningful value, measurable impact, and a broad community benefit. This governance model ensures transparency, accountability, and strong collaboration between the library, the board, and municipal council, all working toward the shared goal of serving the residents of Kirkland. Next slide. These photos tell a story that numbers alone never could. They show neighbors finding connection through our program Pro with Purpose, with conversation, creativity, and belonging, come together week after week as members create warm, handmade winter wearables for our vulnerable people in our community. They show joy and laughter as we kicked off the year with our very first Elvis-themed senior appreciation program, reminding our older adults that they are seen, valued, and celebrated. They reflect meaningful collaboration, like our partnership with the Salvation Army through Feed the Need, Forgive the Fine initiative, where fines were removed and dignity was restored as we gathered over 200 food items and $500 in donations for a local food bank. They capture moments of pride as we welcome local authors, hosted live dramatic readings during holidays, and began shaping the future of the library through the development of our teen advisory group, empowering young people to have a voice in the space that serves them. And throughout the year, these efforts were recognized repeatedly in local media because the library continues to show up, respond, and make a difference in people's lives. What you see here is not programming just for programming's sake. It is community care, and it is connection. And it is public library that Kirkland Lake deserves. But we won't stop there. We will continue to serve in larger, more profound, and impactful ways in 2026. Next slide. So this slide outlines the library's proposed 2026 operating budget, and it's important to walk through it clearly and honestly. On the revenue side, the library generates income through a combination of user fees, grants, donations, recoveries, and other revenue totaling $63,579. We actively pursue grants, community donations, and alternatively funding wherever possible. And we are proud of the support we receive. However, as a public library, revenue generation will always be limited to our foundational mandate to provide free and equitable access to service. On the expenditure side, our total projected operating cost for 2026 is $428,560. The largest portion of this budget is labor and related costs at $340,769. This reflects the reality that library services are delivered by people. Trained staff who provide technology assistance, programming, reader support, outreach, and a safe, welcoming environment for the public. Additional costs include material and supplies, utilities, administration, contract services, and minimal interest and long-term debt payments, all of which are carefully managed and reviewed. When revenues are subtracted from expenditures, this results in an operating deficit of $363,981, which represents the portion of funding required from the municipality. This figure is not a shortfall due to inefficiency. It is a cost of delivering a broad, legislated public service that residents rely on every day. The library's operating budget reflects a commitment to access, accountability, and community impact. And we work diligently to ensure that municipal funding is used responsibly and delivers measurable value to the people of Kirkland Lake. Next slide. The budget includes a 3% cost of living adjustment for staff wages, along with increase to benefits, ensuring we can retain qualified staff and remain stable, reliable service for the community. There's also a small increase in administrative expenses, primarily due to the lease of a copy machine and the rising interlibrary loan postage costs, both in which directly support public access to services. Overall, this represents 2.58% increase over the 2025 budget, totaling $9,149. This increase is measured, responsible, and focused on maintaining service levels rather than expanding them. Next slide. With the memorandum of understanding now in place between the municipality and the library board, the municipality will no longer assist the library board with capital projects. As a result, the library board and staff are actively pursuing grants, donations, and creative fundraising efforts to support capital needs and address the realities of our aging building. Next slide. I've outlined the key capital priorities the library board is currently facing. These include essential building infrastructure such as a roof, a ramp, windows, and accessible doors at the adult entrance, all critical to the safety, accessibility, and long-term sustainability. We also have pressing needs within public spaces, including carpeting and furniture in the adult department to ensure the library remains a welcoming, functional environment for residents. Finally, ongoing replacement of staff and public access computers is necessary to keep pace with evolving technology and continue to provide reliable, equitable digital access. These items reflect maintenance and accessibility needs, not simply enhancements, and they are fundamental to the library's ability to serve the community effectively. Next slide. In closing, Texantenny Public Library is not just a building or a budget line. It is a public service that reflects the values of this community. Every day, we provide access to information, technology, learning, safety, and connection for residents of all ages and backgrounds. We do this with care, accountability, and a deep understanding of the people we serve. The 2026 budget before you is measured, responsible, and focused on sustaining essential services, ensuring that Texantenny Public Library remains accessible, welcoming, and relevant in a changing world. On behalf of the library board, staff, and the many residents who rely on us, thank you for your continued support, your partnership, and your commitment to the community of Kirkland Lake. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before opening the table, I do want to thank the library CEO for attending. This is the first year due to the MOU that she is presenting as an outside agency, so she is more than familiar with the process. So we do appreciate your time this evening. And with that, any questions from members of council? Councillor Kiley.
Your worship, just a comment. Based on the increase, Cheryl, that you're asking for, roughly 2.58%, is very reasonable. And I believe you're running a pretty tight ship. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Anything further from members of council? Okay, thank you very much, CEO. Do any of you require the motion, the recommendation be reread? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? None noted. Item carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 7, approval and acceptance of minutes. There are none this evening. Item number 8 is reports from municipal officers and staff. Item 8.1 is the 2026 mayor's budget and 3-year capital plan. I will begin delivering the opening remarks, and we will be joined with Lloyd Crocker, and Bart Seaton may or may not join us as required. But he is with us this evening as well, and I wanted to acknowledge his presence in the room. Moved by Councillor Ranger, seconded by Councillor Kylie. All right, I shall begin. I first want to say that I did not take the decision to use the strong mayor's powers lightly. As we've seen in the news across the province, there are many pieces of this legislation that may do great harm to our municipalities. When strong mayor powers were first proposed, I was completely against them, not knowing at that time that the early deadline for presenting budget was included in those powers. I do feel in this instance, after consistently asking for forward-facing budgets since 2019, to have the budget delivered on or before February 1st deadline, and having the opportunity to request other items, like the 3-year capital forecast we have included this year, benefits not only our council, but also the entire community. I don't want the municipality to continue to deal with budget as a once per year experience, but to have the budget seen as a multi-year roadmap to where we want to build our community to. Along with the 3-year capital forecast, one of the other changes I particularly am proud of is bringing outside agencies to the table, as we just saw, to provide these presentations on budgets. I must note NEF was unable to attend this meeting due to unforeseeable circumstances, and they do send their regrets. For those members of council who served during the 2018 to 2022 term, the process that was undertaken with me was the same as the Finance Committee did in 2019. So I did have the opportunity to see the line by line of each department, ask questions, receive further details, make any notes and suggestions of changes at those meetings. The process resulted in 9 meetings and a stack of approximately 670 pages of information being presented by directors to myself, the CAO, Treasurer, and Director of Community Services as a collective. I also want to note, prior to these meetings that I attended, the CAO had sent directions to decrease the budgets by a targeted number to each department director, as the initial operating and capital numbers equated to a 24% municipal tax levy increase. If we did absolutely everything that is required this year, it would have been a 24%. There are several items coming into the next few months and years that will positively impact future budget processes. We also know that municipal business moves painfully slowly, and items that we are aware of now may only see the light in the next few years. I have grown weary of saying good things are coming and having to wait just as patiently as the rest of the community for the physical work to begin on these projects. But they will have definite positive effects on future budgets coming down the line. But until such time those projects come to fruition, and because this is known as the first mayor's budget, I will state that I feel more than comfortable presenting a good starting point to consider for deliberations at an 8.6%, considering that is where we landed after our final deliberations for the 2025 budget. A sincere attempt was made to balance the outside agency non-negotiable demands from agencies like OPP, ODSP, public health, library, etc., staffing costs and capital requirements, with the desire to meet our commitments to asset management, and the conundrum of the expectation for every municipality to continue to deliver the same level of service without increasing cost in an ever more expensive world. Of note, this year, there is proposed 15 capital budget items to be funded through the tax levy, with all other capital projects being funded through a combination of government grants, funding, CCBF, formerly gas tax, OSIP, reserves, debt, etc. This budget allows for much needed infrastructure repair, including the municipal portions of the Connecting Link projects on Duncan Avenue, flood mitigation near Allen and Earl, and community health and safety issues like installing a crosswalk at 25 Tweedsmuir. I will guarantee fellow members of council, I will not veto any decision made by the majority vote, barring anything that would have catastrophic effects on delivering the services we currently provide to our community. I expect anything that would result in a decrease of services we provide would be brought to public attention, and I would accept nothing less as a member of our community. If councils already have identified items they wish to be changed, you can use item 11 on the agenda, notices of motion, to provide staff some notice to prepare notes or calculations for the February 10th deliberations. After all that, I now present this budget to you, fellow members of public and council, through the expertise of staff with a little wiggle room. This council always works best when we work together. And I wanted the process to be as close to what we are familiar with as possible while using the benefit of delivering budget documents earlier in the year. I look forward to seeing the amendments we pass through collaboration and voting together. Thank you. And with that, I welcome the treasurer for the actual 2026 budget presentation. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Council. You'll see in your packages under the report tab. That's what I'll focus most of my time on this evening. There's a whole bunch of items in there. You'll see it's substantially longer than it has been in the past. And that's, if you watch the patterns since I've been here, it's getting longer and longer every year as we try and get more and more information to you. Try and fill out some of the, every year you ask questions and I try and anticipate a little bit more and more where we're gonna go with that. So much longer, so bear with me. First page, you'll see under the introduction, we talk about collaborative. Mayor alluded to it. It really is a multi-stage, multi-meeting. It just takes a lot of time to go from first steps to what you see here this evening. We were somewhat hindered this year. We're hindered this year in the sense that some of my technological tools are lagging. So it took a little bit longer internally, but we kept to the timelines that the mayor wanted. The budget process under Strong Mayors, I'm just reminding you that it is laid out in the report that was presented December 16th. And there's a link in your agendas, so you can look it up if you want to refresh that, because it is substantially different for you as councillors. Page 2. So the proposed budget for operating, water, wastewater, and capital for all attachments here. They're laid out by those titles. There's a few other attachments, reserves, reserve funds, and debt, and the debt limit, and some other additional information. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the forecasted reserves, reserve funds. That's attachment number 4. I'm just going to give generic comments. You'll see they are not at the same kind of levels that they have been in the past. It was interesting and well noted, the comments about the DSAP reserves. We have the same challenges. The reserves are not an endless pool that we can draw on to reduce our tax levy in this scenario. We try judiciously to use them, but without some kind of replenishment strategy, they're not there in the long term to solve some of our problems. So it's just kind of my warning to you. I've said the same warning every year. It's not unique, but I just want to emphasize it. This one's a little bit different, the reserve presentation, and then we try to give you an idea of where it will be if the budget passes as is. like I said, you will see some of the reserves that we've used in the past, the two capital reserves and working capital, and that they're substantially down. Water and wastewater are also substantially down. That's a reflection. We've spent an awful lot of money over the last 3 years in capital, especially water, wastewater, aqua projects and various other things. We've been able to take advantage of some very large funding opportunities, but they're not free. We have to put in our share. So it's part of the process. So, I would like to remind you that we received a very sizable refund from the WSIB board, $484,791. So in 2025, that went into a reserve. And in this budget, it is the one unique reserve drawdown that we've got to, the mayor suggested, to keep the tax levy to a lower level. Any other reserve movements you see in the budget are driven by the operating realities, things like mat tax and stuff like that. But this is the one that was specifically used to bring the tax levy down, and it was about half of that. The projected debt schedule, which is the other part of the attachment for, that's brand new to you. I really thought in the past, having a column that just said we're going to pay it with debt doesn't do service to what that means in our reality. So debt is a useful tool. We try to focus it entirely on things like equipment and infrastructure, but there is a very real cost to using debt. You know, just like on our own personal finances, you have to cash flow, you have to pay for it. And in our world, in the operating budget, you'd have debt payments, both interest and capital, as an operating line. So anytime we use debt, that means there's an increase in the operating budget, just to draw the parallel. So, you know, it's not a cost-free solution. It's a smoothing solution, if you want to call it that, because you get to spread the pain over a period of time. But it's in there. It's information for you to take a look at. It's interesting. There's a limit in there. It's poorly presented. It's the provincial calculation of what we're allowed to borrow, but it's based on what we can pay in any particular year. It's very unrealistic. We really couldn't take on $3.5 million worth of payments. It would be a ridiculous amount for us to try to absorb. But under their rules, for the size of our municipality, how much debt we have existing, that's what they say we can spend. There's a couple of calculations in here at the top of page 3, where I just threw in a couple of scenarios. So you'll see for $1 million loan, you know, I believe it was 4%. Would cause about $125,000 of payments. You know, that's almost a 1% increase in our tax levy. The same loan over a period of 5 years, which everybody who's ever gone out for a mortgage understands that the shorter your period, the bigger the payments, would require 221 or 1.5% tax levy increase. So again, I'm just drawing the parallel that if you go out and borrow money, there is a direct increase in the tax levy. It's just a smoothing of the total amount. Public meeting, which is laid out very well in the rest of the materials here. I won't go over that again, but it's coming next week. Water and wastewater user fees. So we usually get to that a little bit later in the year, and that's just to incorporate what's happening in the budget. We do have an increase budgeted in water and wastewater, and it's consistent with the asset management plan, the direction they gave to us. So it's not something we went out and just made up. It's not an increase in our spending. It's a reflection of the fact that we have to replenish those reserves. It's the one area that we automatically replenish our reserves, any surplus in those two departments. So we're talking about the committee whole budget survey. So again, you know, from my point of view, it's a little disappointing. We get 90 responses. We have about 8,000 people in town. But it's still well worth the exercise, and I think you should take some time, if you haven't already, to go take a look at it. It has some interesting parallels along ages and owners and stuff like that, but much of the meat of it is in the comments. And I think every one of us, I don't think there's a comment in there that I haven't heard before. And the pressures that you guys face as counselors, what you have to listen to when you get cornered at Tim Hortons, and what we hear when we go home at night, from our neighbors and friends and stuff like that. There's nothing particularly new in there. It just kind of puts an edge on the fact that we're here, and those are the type of things that, you know, our community is thinking about. So it's excellent information, even if it is a very small survey. And I guess my comment that I make every year is statistically, it doesn't mean anything. You can't rely on it to say we should cut this or do that. It's more information for you and us. I will note though, you see the top 3 service priority areas and at least 3. This moves around so much. 5 people voting in a different way can totally change the list, which is why I commented about 90 being a bit of a disappointment. But it's still a representative of the people who took the survey. The proposed capital budget, which we'll get to later on when we go to the committee of whole. I'll take note of the fact that the tax levy increase, it's not just a projected increase. I'd like to remind everybody that the asset management plan suggested that we increase the tax levy portion of the capital budget to reflect the fact that we're so far behind on our infrastructure. And that increase was 1.8%. You'll see it's roughly that this year. If you get to a place where you feel you need to adjust the capital budget, I would like you to consider the fact that if we don't spend it, it should be going into reserves. That is the asset management plan model. In the end, it's still your decision to make, but that's part of, just want to be explicit about that. The operating budgets themselves, there's some information in here. These are very quick, very short summaries that I put in there. Each director will do their own small presentations this evening. They are available to answer questions. I will make an attempt to answer whatever I can as well when we go to the committee of whole. But you know, there's some interesting things in here. We talk about retiree benefits increasing. And that's a unique thing of a municipality, is that in the past and going forward, we provide benefits to our retirees. They bear a part of the cost, but we still fund it, much like we do with our existing employees. So in the administration budget, that's not a tiny number. Community services, you can see that there's a 1.9% decrease. I'd like to make a comment too. Overall, this budget, many of the departments were able to hold the line, did a really good job of keeping costs under control. Some of them have a harder time doing it with the wage part. You know, they're very wage heavy, and we all know that wages are a primary driver in our increasing costs. But for the most part, most of the departments were able to come in very, very tight compared to some of the stuff we've seen in the past. Community services is an example of that. Corporate services, you'll see wide range. I've moved, just to be clear, in the budget itself, I've moved one area out of treasury, and that, you saw the presentation tonight, the OPP. So there's really no reason not to treat them like an outside charge, like the DSAB, the health unit. It's been under treasury for years, but the mentality's changed. We don't have our own police force. So it's really an outside charge, so it's been moved down. And there's one building, so now there's a separate buildings department under the corporate services, and that's to reflect this building and the OPP building, the one that we lease. So just to be clear about it, you see the changes, they're not perfectly comparable to last year. That's what I did there. The other departments, there's some information there for you by the areas, by the presentations you'll see tonight. Other charges, again, not to put too blunt an edge on it, the police have an 11% increase. They were explained tonight what was driving that, but the reality is we have to pay it anyways. And that's, approximately 2.5% of our increase is just driven by that one line item. So, again, the way of water and wastewater, the 1.5 and the 4 comes from the asset management plan. So general, we've had this in here a couple of times now over the years, but corporation has approximately this year, 2025, $15.5 million of wages. We range in who gets what between unions and admin. I've used 3%. you'll see it comes out to about $465,000, which would be a 3.5% tax levy if we made no effort to control our costs. If you just gave everybody the wage increase and walked away from it, not thinking about it, you'd have a 3.5% tax levy increase. There is no funding for this. The town, the municipality bears this through the tax levy with no support. We get a general support grant, but it's not directed towards wages per se. So as mentioned, we're recommending an 8.6% tax levy increase. I will take a minute to kind of mention, there are a couple of small reserves that we touched on last year, the DSAB and the health unit ones. There's still some left there if you want to consider that as part of your deliberation. Of course, anything you want to consider is entirely your purview. I'm not doing anything other than reminding you there is some balances in those two from the previous years. The capital, I'll take a minute if you don't mind before we get to capital. There's something different going on this year a little bit. We've signed on to this new program to manage our fleet. You'll see that there's still trucks in the capital budget. Trucks in the capital budget right now are just an approximation. We're going out. We don't know yet what our lease costs are for this year. They have to go out and source the trucks. They have to come up with the costs and they have to give us what those payments are. So I didn't remove them from the budget, the capital budget. That's just there to not shock anybody after the fact, say, oh, we got another $150,000 of lease costs. It's just an estimate. It's reflected as what was in the budget. There's no way for me to say this is exactly what we're going to pay in leases until we source the vehicles that are going to be replaced. You know, so right now our estimate is that capital is what's going to cover our lease payments for the year. If you remember in their presentation, there was lots of columns and, you know, lots of breakdowns. But the model is they replace every 5 years. What happens then is that this year, there'll be quite a few replacements because we have a significant amount of our trucks that are old and ready to be retired. So again, the numbers that are in the capital budget right now, and they're under debt, which is exactly how they will be paid, except for it'll be moved to the operating budget. You know, next year you won't see it in capital. It'll be in operating. But I really, you know, when we first did this, you guys hadn't passed that agreement yet. It hadn't been approved when I first did the budget. And I wanted to be very explicit that we have something in the budget for that program this year anyways, where it's a year of change coming up. Hopefully that addresses anything there. That is most of what I wanted to point out this evening before we move on. I'd be happy to answer questions. Brought my computer this year. It's a bit of a different process under the strong mayor's power, so we won't be hearing from the public till next week. So if you have specific questions, I'll make an attempt this evening to answer them myself or Bart. But if not, if I can't answer it quickly, we'll put it in the pile to include with whatever we hear next week from the public. And we'll come back with a proper answer if we can't do it this evening.
For that, just question of procedure, are we moving all questions about this presentation to the committee of the whole?
Okay, one more generalized conversation.
So I stepped in.
No, that's okay. I was just, yeah. Okay, so thank you for the presentation. So as per the procedures, how we're doing things, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a brief recess of about 5 minutes just to do bio breaks and drinks or whatever we need, and then we're going to move into the committee of the whole so that we can have a more fulsome discussion of the budget presentations and after the deliberations after the presentations of each of the directors. So if you have questions at this time, if you can quickly jot them down, when we move into that committee of the whole, we'll start actual conversation. So thank you for that. With that, we are in about a 5-minute recess, real quick, and just do what you have to. the whole because we're on recess and we need to take a recess to move into the committee of the whole. So I'm going to call to order, but I will forego the moment of silence, just because we have held it earlier today. So Madam Clerk, did you record the time? Perfect. Of course, item number 2, the land acknowledgement, we're also going to forego that this evening as it was stated at the beginning of the night. Item number 3, disclosures of pecuniary interest. Are there any at this meeting? None noted. Item number 4, new business matters referred by council. Item 4.1 is the corporate presentations of the 2026 mayor's budget and 3-year capital plan. Again, I'm just noting, if possible, can council members hold questions until the end of each department briefing? And if you can note what page you're referring to, please advise and the clerk will bring it up on our screens for us. So thank you very much. With those little items being taken care of, we will begin with item 4.1.1, Administration Department and Council. This will be presented by both our CAO, Alan Smith, and our clerk, Jennifer Montoy. So thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Owens.
In the previous meeting, you said that hold back for questions from that presentation.
Yes.
This one, at what
Yeah.
point can we ask or make those comments?
Okay, so if you feel as council, do we want to address that first? We certainly can do that.
There's a few things,
Okay.
there's one thing I would like to address on my behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. I just figured we'd do it after everything, but no, this is a fluid committee of the whole. So that being said,
Oh, I'm
Councillor
the one
Owens.
that's there. I'll go first. One moment. I've addressed this through you, Madam Mayor. I've addressed it through with the treasurer just before we started this. From the get-go of this process, it served me how we've always called it the mayor's budget, the mayor's budget, the mayor's budget has been drilled as that, and I've waited. I wanted to see how other municipalities in Ontario that have those powers to do it and what they called it and how they presented it, and yes, there's different approaches to it. And I was asked on the weekend about a conversation, I didn't hear it, that the CAO was speaking on the radio about how this strong mayor's power has made this process so much more complicated. And in the end, and I'm gonna quote what the treasurer said, it was, I wrote it down so I remember it, it was a multi-stage, multi-meeting, essentially team effort, and it irks the hell out of me that we're still calling this the mayor's budget. It's the town of Kirkland Lake's budget. It is a democratic process, and I'm basically feeling that the 6 of us on this side of the table are useless. And it's no offense to you, because we've had a few conversations about this. Staff worked on the budget. Staff have worked on this budget very hard to get something. Do I agree with the 8.6? Absolutely not. Am I thrilled by it? You're gonna have to convince me to vote more, to vote even matters. But to agree to it, but in the legislation, it says that the mayor prepares the budget and then it becomes the mayor's budget. Staff prepared the budget. Staff have worked on this, and it annoys the heck out of me that it's still being called the mayor's budget. And I don't know if something can be changed on that one, because I've seen other municipalities do it as Timmins' budget, Iroquois Falls' budget, Timiskaming Shore's budget. Why are we choosing to, of all the things we can stick on, why are we sticking on the mayor's budget? That's my comment.
Thank you for that comment. I do share in your sentiment. This is not my budget any more than last year's was, or the year before, the year before that, or the year before that. It does change because of the legislation and because I chose the February 1st deadline. That is what triggered this title of mayor's budget. That's it. That's why it has become my budget. And like I said in my speaking notes, we're gonna work collaboratively on this, just as we have in every other year. I look forward to the amendments from the team, because I see us as a team, not only with staff, but as the 7 of us at this table. So I do agree with your sentiments. This isn't the mayor's budget any more than last year's was. It's just the title thrust upon us by me choosing to use that piece of legislation. And you're right, other municipalities don't use the term as entrenched as we have in this, in this circumstance. So thank you for stating those things. Councillor Beckett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would you allow me 3 really quick things?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, first of all, I agree with Councillor Owens, 100%. Secondly, in the reserves, it says something about Main Street revitalization, just for information. Is that a historic thing, and is that actually Main Street or government road? It's just for information. Thank you. That's why I wanted to ask it at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't find it. Okay, so it's attachment 4 in ours, yeah, you have it. It just says Main Street revitalization, I just wonder what that is.
Sorry. Let me start on a blank for a minute. It's under the transfers from? Oh,
Well, just the title, like what is the Main Street revitalization?
which page?
Attachment 4, so page 3 of 4. Can I show you?
Please.
Oh, I don't know.
Sarah, it just says Main Street revitalization.
That should say Nords.
It should say what?
Nords.
North. Can I
It's a
ask
funding program.
what North is?
Nords is funding, we just sort of came down there.
So it's just wrongly.
It's just titled incorrectly. It's a funding source. It started under the COVID timeframe. It was an infrastructure equipment program that we accumulated almost $700,000 of funding from. If I'm not mistaken, most of that money is now basically spent on aqua filters, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry, it's titled wrong. It should say Nords, Nords.
Thank you for that catch. Go ahead.
Just before our agenda for this committee of the whole, there's a sheet, attachment 7. Can I request that we have that in a readable form? It's way too small. It's the 2026 non-union and management salary grid. It's just tiny. Okay. And then the last thing is for our fleet, the treasurer mentioned something about, there's a number of trucks that have to be replaced or whatever. When does that and how does that get decided? Does that get decided through the budget process, or is that already been decided, or just you make it?
So, council approved the program. I didn't do a very good job of explaining it a few minutes ago. You approved the program, which means between the various directors who have vehicles, director of corporate services and the provider, they're now going to decide which vehicles meet the criteria to be replaced under that program, the 5-year model, the leasing, all the information you guys were provided in that previous report. Just to speak to how it fits. So yes, there'll be several vehicles replaced this year, more than a normal year, because we have a very clean truck inventory fleet. Yes, thank you. I don't know exactly what it is. I keep hearing 10, but it could move off of 10, one way or the other, a couple of vehicles. Once they're identified exactly, and once they are sourced, as in they have to go to the market, they have to buy them, at which point we will know the rate that's built into the lease, and we will know how much the lease is total. And at that point, we will know exactly what the lease payments are. Unfortunately, I don't have that information. There's no way for me to estimate it. Those are 2 factors that I can't guess. I don't even, sorry. And just one more piece to that. You'll see that there are 2 trucks sitting in the capital budget, adds up to about $150,000. That is really just a guesstimate of what we're going to be paying in lease costs, because I don't have enough information to come up with it at this point.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So that decision now is in the hands of just one director that has implications for our budget, like we don't have a say in that?
So,
Am I misunderstanding?
to you, Madam Mayor, I don't remember if we totally come back to you with a report on it. But like most of the items in the budget, the directors make decisions day to day on purchases and no purchases. You know, that's, I thought, laid out very well in the report, but, yeah, I don't think maybe Sean can correct me, but every director who has a vehicle is in the mix to have replaced in any particular year has some say in what happens. But for the most part, it's a structured program where every 5 years we're replacing trucks and turning trucks in and stuff like that. It's not an awful lot of decision making. We can override it, is my understanding. But you wouldn't necessarily see that back here other than in a reporting format.
Yes, so both Director Forte, Public Works, and myself are working through the vehicles. But yeah, there wasn't hardly any, there's really not any decisions on it. At the close to 5-year period where costs are set to increase, they will be just trading them in. So it's automatic. That's why so any vehicles that are over 5 years now will be new ones will purchase in 2026. And then going forward, there'll be a couple each year that will be replaced.
Sorry, I'm just gonna interject. I just wanna make sure that we're not re-deliberating a decision that we've already made at a previous council. So just ensure that we're targeting our questions to how it's gonna affect the budget this year. Last follow-up before I have to move on. Councillor Dykens?
Yeah, so I understood when, say this year, we decide on two trucks, then at 5 years, it automatically gets renewed. I didn't know we were going to do 10 trucks that we already have, and that's my, that's my area of interest, that I didn't know we were going to renew 10, because that has a significant impact on our budget. So,
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Owen?
Through you, your worship, in past budgets, departments that were replacing vehicles came to council with the numbers of why that vehicle needed replaced. Now I'm hearing, well, we're replacing up to 10 vehicles. That's a pretty iffy number. And it's a pretty hefty number. And there's no documentation showing that these vehicles have to be replaced this year in this budget. Yes, we went into this leasing program, but that doesn't mean we have to replace all our trucks this year if they're perfectly usable and worthwhile. So I have a hard time looking at budget numbers based on up to 10 trucks or about 10 trucks, whatever the phrase was, and no documentation to show that those trucks are worn out and can't be used.
CAO Smith, and then the treasurer, and yes, you're on the list for sure. Yes, sorry, CAO Smith.
To you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'll be informed that we have 12 trucks have already been ordered, 10 half tons and 2 3/4 tons. The council agreed to the program and we moved forward with the program. And over the long run, as per the presentation that the council made, we're looking to save close to $500,000, I believe, over the 10-year period doing it this way. And again, this is a very efficient program and a cost-effective program, but the trucks have been ordered.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to emphasize the whole point of the program was to realize those cost savings by following a patterned replacement program. The savings between the lease and the current method that we use right now was laid out, as you mentioned, almost $500,000. So in the report, you know, the whole point of the program is to have that turnover model, which reduce our long-term costs. In any particular year, we could be replacing several vehicles. but in the long term, it saves us a significant amount of money. The budget already reflects, even though it's not presented the way we'll be presenting it next year, because it came in after the budget was kind of locked down essentially. The budget does present a number of approximately 140, 150, which you would have had for your consideration. So, it takes away the model you suggested, which is we're going to look at every vehicle and decide if we spent enough in maintenance and stuff like that. But it ensures that we have, without the turnover model, the savings aren't there. That was the presentation we saw.
Thank you for that. Councillor Shabbat.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think I just want to quickly address the issue that you brought up. In your speech, you indicated that you weren't going to use the veto if a majority of us here pass whatever that budget rate might be. So, and to me, that is pretty much, that's very good, and very reassuring that we're not sitting here just wasting our time and don't count for anything. So for me, coming to this meeting, we talk, Pat and I talk, what is our role here? It is gonna be a mayor's budget and mayor's gonna just push it through. So what are we doing here? So having said that, to me is very reassuring, for me anyways, to participate as effectively as I can and live into whatever the outcome might be. And the second thing is I'm looking forward to see what the procedure will be. It's gonna be similar to last year where we have a piece of paper and everybody write our motion and whatnot and input into the budget, or it's gonna be different. I don't know that. So I'm gonna be paying attention and listen to what's happening here, and then we see what the procedure will be. And I mean, you guys already said we have to put everything to notice of motion, but then again, I don't think we have 12 or 10 items, will be 10 items for notice of motion. That should be a way to be very effective to say, okay, here are my issues here. I mean, if it's one, that's okay for one notice of motion, but if you have 5 or 7 items, must you be coming in with 5 different notices of motion, or can you just aggregate them in one notice of motion? So I'm looking forward to see how we're gonna flesh this out as we go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. I do appreciate that. We were presented how things were going to run. We were given the documents. And I appreciate that it seems like there may be 15, 20, 30 amendments. We've been at this quite a long time. In the 8 years that I've sat in council, and we have a member here that's been sitting here for 12. I don't really foresee bombardment of changes. I do appreciate that the concern is who gets to speak first. And just as much as this is the mayor's budget, but it's really not, I think we're all on the same team, that anything that comes as an amendment will be seen as something that we did as a team. I know at times we all want to score political points, and I think that's the concern with the mayor's budget, that no matter how good, bad, or ugly this is going to be out in the public, because we're speaking about it as the mayor's budget, I will have the biggest target on my back. But that's not the way we work. We haven't worked like that from day one, and we're not going to work like that now. We do everything as a team for the betterment of our community, and I think we'll be able to work through our amendments as a team as well. So thank you for that. Any questions about the budget presentation before we moved into the committee of the whole that the treasurer has presented? Councillor Kylie.
Through your worship, can I make one comment?
Absolutely.
I know we want to get on with what the program is set up to be today. I thought when these vehicles, after 4 years, they'd come up, we weren't necessarily going to turn them in. We could keep them in stock or buy them ourselves. Normally, when you're coming off a lease, it's at a pretty decent price. Well, we hold it wholesale because the dealer is gonna make money on them. Doesn't look like that's part of the picture. I don't know, that's just a comment.
To you, Madam Mayor. I'm not 100% sure of how they came up with their projections. But the whole point of it is that the savings come from that trade-in value is the biggest part of the savings. So we don't wear the vehicle out, the way trucks work, and we're all familiar with that, they hold their value much longer. The operating costs increase, and after 5 years, and we benefit from whatever that value is at 5 years on the trade-in. So you're right in the sense that you could do this vehicle by vehicle. You could say this vehicle's been great. Trading value is 30 this year, it might be 30 next year, but that's not the point of the program. The program is, these are people who have managed thousands and thousands and thousands of truck purchases and leases. They're better at identifying when a truck should be traded in versus when it should be, extended. From a practical point of view, they have you remember in the presentation, they talked about 5% improvement in gas mileage, or 5% loss every year that you keep it on the road. They've done the math to support the numbers, the costs, and that trade-in value is where we get our biggest benefit from the savings. So, it may sound like it's a fait accompli, but it isn't. There's still some functionality on our side about which vehicles get traded in, but it's not, we don't envision going against that model unless, we had to keep the truck for us. So if the truck was built up to be something very special and, we didn't want to trade it in yet because it had 16 accessories that we spent lots of money, something like that, maybe. I'm struggling to think of an example, is what I am. The model is after 5 years, the operating costs start to deteriorate. And that's the point where your trade-in value is worth something. So that's a very simplistic presentation. But I would suggest we could go back to the committee report at some point if you wanted to, or you could do it yourselves to see, the presentation laid it out pretty good, I think, and talked about the risks, with turning it over 5 years and not. But we're relying very heavily on a very large corporation who does this for several municipalities, many corporations. And, their statistics kind of support it. It's not, it won't guarantee it's 500,000, but it's going to be a nice number compared to what we're paying now.
Thank you for that.
I have no problem with the program we signed up with. I just was curious at the end of the 4 years or whatever.
It is different than in the past where we individually talk to the vehicles. So I understand the confusion and the discomfort a little bit. But that is the benefit of the model, is to take that away and start using, I've heard it said at council, we want to do more analysis on our discussion around repetition and that. Well, this corporation is doing it for us, and they're aligning us up with a better model.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anything further about the budget presentation that Lloyd had delivered before we moved in the committee of the whole? Okay. So with that, we're going to move on to the administration department and council. So CAO Smith and Madam Clerk will continue.
For you.
Council.
So I just want to touch on the numbers first before I go into the details. So when we look at the CAO's office, the budget for 2026, that represents a 14.81% increase over last year, but I will discuss it in depth why the increase is there. The clerk's office had a decrease of 7.24%, and Mayor and Council's budget for 2026 as a increase of 3.07%. Taking all together for the total administration's budget, we're looking at a 1.45% increase. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through quickly some of the rationale for the increases and changes in the CAO's office. Like all departments, we have increased our labor costs due to the cost of living increase, and that's in this case is 3%. We moved the student bursary program into the CO's office. That was $1,000. And also, you may recall, late last year, also approved a new Civic Awards, and that was a $2,000 program. Also, last year, we combined the recognition committee with the wellness committee. And at the time, we didn't move the recognition budget from corporate services to my office. We're moving it this year to my office, and that was, I believe, $12,065 that transferred into my division. Now, the larger amount is in 2025, there was $30,000 that was still transferred from reserves as revenue. That originated in 2024 when we did the strategic plan, which is $30,000. That wasn't removed in last year's budget. The funds weren't used. This year, I'm removing $30,000 in revenue. Also, there's been a slight increase in membership fees for the CO's office. I'll now turn it over to our municipal clerk, who will go through her division and mayor and council budget.
Thank you. The clerk's office budget reflects careful alignment with our legislative obligations, our service demands, and responsible financial management, with minimal net impact and several cost controls built in. New this year, records management clerk, records and elections coordinator. This is a role refinement, not an expansion. It will ensure we meet increasingly complex legislative requirements and strict election and record timelines, and it will strengthen the compliance and risk management with minimal fiscal impact. Employee and family assistance programs, or EFAP program, they've been actually transferred. They've been long-standingly in the clerk's budget, but they're now transferred into the human resources for consistency and centralized oversight. This improves the budget transparency and aligns with the program where it's operationally being managed. Benefits adjustments for cost savings. Benefits have been recalculated using a 3-year trend and current staffing levels. This resulted in the cost savings, reflecting more accurate and conservative forecasting. Increased revenues for civil marriage ceremonies. A slight revenue increase is projected through enhanced service delivery, specifically those ceremonies in the council chambers, and this reflects both improved customer service and modest revenue generation without new costs. Reduction in material and supplies. The decrease reflects the major technology and ergonomic investments that were already made in the last 2 years of budgeting. This included computer scanners, chairs, and so that now the costs are lower. Indigent unclaimed burial management, we're seeing an increase in funding, and it's been based on a 4-year trend in coroner's orders, and this is necessary and a compassionate response to a demonstrated community need. 911 service cost, they've been transferred and moved to the fire services budget where they're more appropriately belong operationally. This improves the clarity and accountability without increasing the overall municipal costs. The 2026 election expenditures, we have proactively planned for the 2026 elections with the projected cost of $45,000. Funding will come from the election reserve, currently at $41,000, with $10,000 contribution proposed for this year. Any funds not spent through the election process will be recommended for recommitment back into the election reserve, supporting future election sustainability and long-term financial planning. And this approach avoids last-minute pressures and ensures election readiness without tax spikes. And a closing message, overall, this budget is going to reflect strong financial stewardship, legislative compliance, service improvements, and proactive long-term planning, all while keeping fiscal impacts minimal and controlled.
I didn't mention about council.
Oh, you want me to do the council first?
It's fine. Okay, sorry. So I just, we're getting used to it. Councilor Ranger.
Ladies first.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Was there any consideration in putting the benefits
line item under, human resources? Cause do they manage it or does your department manage it?
Yeah, so, want to do the formal thing, we're in committee of the whole. That is exactly what has happened. It was under my, is under the clerk's division budget. It has now been transferred to the human resources.
EFAP was, but I'm asking about benefits.
That's the benefits for the staff in the clerk's department.
Oh, yours are different than other departments?
Every department has benefits built into the salary. So what has transpired in the clerk's office, there has been coming and going of people and longevity of the tenure. And I looked at the trend post or pre-COVID and I noticed that it was always estimated a little higher. So I looked at the trends and I was able to reduce the benefits line that was typically depleted. So that's what that is.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shabbat?
Yeah, to you, your worship, to the CEO, I see here, lines that retired councillor benefits were adjusted to reflect a significant change in use. And based on last year total usage, I'm not aware of, retired councillors having benefits.
Okay, so seeing that question, we're gonna continue with, Madam Clerk's presentation because it does answer, even though CAO spoke to it, the Madam Clerk has the actual, talking points. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So it does answer your question just by a different person.
So the retired counselor benefits, the budget adjustment for the $10,000 variance, the budget's been adjusted to reflect a significant change in actual usage based on last year's experience. Approximately $10,000 variance between budget and actuals corrects the historical forecasting and improves accuracy moving forward. Importantly, this does not represent a reinstatement of expansion of benefits. The past practice of the town paying benefits for former council members was discontinued effective December 1st, 2018. Previously, these benefits were allocated if an existing member of council served a minimum of 3 terms, but that program was formally resolved to be canceled by the former council and effective that December 1st date. So this adjustment strictly reflects obligations for 2 qualifying persons only. And in terms of the actual benefits for around the table, it is based on use. So the trend is based on use. And secondly, the student bursary program, it was $5,000 variation. It was transferred from the mayor's operating budget to the CAO's administration operating budget. And this change improves administrative oversight and aligns the program with where it's being operationally managed as well. And it's not a new expense and it does not increase the town's overall spending.
Thank you for that. So does that answer the question that you directed at the CAO? Yes, perfect. Mr. Treasurer, Lloyd Proper, you may.
I would just like to point something out because it's an excellent question and it applies across the corporation. There are several departments who have retired individuals who collect benefits, and that's part of our programs. And they can move around because it's an actual claims basis. They can move around significantly between years. If somebody gets sick and has to, draw on some very expensive drugs, that line item moves up. It's a very similar benefit system to what we offer our current employees. It's not abnormal to see some big variations. They move around from year to year. It is mostly driven by actual claims by individuals. So it stands out in this department because it's a small dollar amount. You won't see it stand out in some of the other departments, which are much larger dollar amounts. But that variation is in every single department that has retirees. So it kind of moves around a lot, but it's understandable why.
Councillor Dykens and then Councillor Kylie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the mayor and council's budget that had an increase of 3%, I see what it says here about the retired council benefits and the bursary. Is any of that increase like salaries for councillors and mayor? Okay, thank you.
So the answer is no.
Thank you. Yeah, we need the verbal. Councillor Kylie?
Yeah, through you, your worship, I still don't quite understand this retired bursary program. Is it a decrease in the budget or is it an increase?
The retiree The retirees benefits or the bursary program?
Oh, no, not, sorry, the retired council benefits. I don't quite understand that.
So there was a policy put forth in council a long time ago.
Yeah.
I went back to 2014. Council used to pass a remuneration by bylaw. And in those bylaws, there was stipulation about how council that had sat a term of 3 years would benefit from, after they were no longer on council, would benefit from obtaining the benefit. We still have 2 active people that are have those benefits because the policy continues for those that were on it, right? So there's still a cost of the municipality. And I don't know if the treasurer wants to go more into depth, but I think that's ultimately.
So, sorry, just before, so that specific item increased 3%, but it contributed to the overall council budget, but just that line item increased by 3%.
So
Is that your?
in 2018, council voted to remove that, is it a pension or a benefit?
No, they're grandfathered in.
It was benefits. It was benefits, so that,
It's not a
it-
pension.
no,
it's health,
it was
vision,
benefits,
dental.
yeah.
Okay,
You're good with
I
that?
I don't recall voting for it, but
That was one of our first
Yeah, I know.
items that we did when we were the new council, is we removed that and we did 4 years. We said for 4 years, we won't take an increase. Like during one of our first meetings.
Yeah.
We were real keen. Go ahead, Councillor Owen.
Yes, through your worship. I just want to clarify that the current council is not going to get benefits. We
yeah,
are not
that's
getting
what I was getting
benefits.
at, yeah.
That's
Yes.
for the public, okay?
Yeah, it was,
That,
Yeah.
the previous council, we killed that, for councillors. No, we did make a motion, like.
yeah, it's done.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyways, to get back to this.
Yes, let's get back to this.
The election expenditures are projected to be 45,000, right? We have 41,000 in reserves. And we're gonna use all that plus add 10, right? Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, so the treasurer will explain how it works in the budget.
But, is it wise to use the whole reserve fund, or would it be better to, I'm not sure who I'm asking the question.
I can answer the question.
Or would it be wiser to add it on to, I don't want to increase taxes, but
That's what you're doing.
I know that's what I'm asking, Pat, but I just, normally we don't draw down reserve funds to zero.
Yes, so we're gonna have Madam Clerk speak first and then the treasurer.
The election reserve is there specifically to fund the election, to remove the direct hit in an election year to the whole of the budget at the election year. So it is prudent to use the election reserve because that is the purpose in which it has been instituted. So are we gonna draw down all of the money in the election reserve? Not likely. It's there if it's needed, and whatever we don't use, we recommit to the election reserve. Every year, we will make a recommendation for council to fund the election reserve so that in the year of an election, we have full money, if not very close to the full money that we would need to run the election based on forecasts.
Sounds good? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I thought it was a good answer too.
Counselor Shabbat.
Yeah, okay, just thinking here, through you, your worship, to the treasurer, in your presentation, I'm just looking at this for administration, can you just explain this to me? Overall administration budget increased by 1.5%. The CEO office has a budget of increase of approximately 14.8%, while the clerk office expects a decrease of 7.2%. Mayor and council an increase of 3.1%, driven primarily by an increase in retiree benefits. So you mean to tell me that 14.8% for the CEO office is driven by that retiree benefits sorry, to go back to this, because this is what you have in your
To you, Madam Mayor.
presentation,
So that 14
.8.
in the CAOs.
Yeah.
So as CAO pointed out, there's $30,000 revenue drop in his budget. And there's an increase in expenditures that were transferred from two other departments, if I'm not mistaken, into his budget.
Okay.
So that increase, there's a decrease in some other budgets. You probably won't see it because they're moved from much bigger budgets. But those, those are the three factors. The clerk's office and the mayor, we were talking about benefits in particular, retiree benefits, and normal benefits, so it's slightly different factors driving those two. But the CAOs was the $30,000 drop in revenue from the reserve transfer and the transfer of those two other responsibilities into his budget. So it's not an increase in expenditure over the whole, like we didn't go out and buy new stuff or hire anyone.
All right.
It's an adjustment from last year more than anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything further from members of council? Okay, we can move on to our next item, which is Corporate Services Department, item 4.1.2. And we will welcome Director Sean McCart to come up to the table as well. Thank you, sir.
It's very informal.
Yeah.
I never just want to have it.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking.
We're being more fun with it, but it's still a little organized. Thank you for that. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So our overall increase in the budget in corporate services is just under 4% for 2025, 2026. I will go through each one. We did have an increase in three and a decrease in three of them. Human resources is up, information technology, procurement, and then treasury is down over 50,000. Health and safety and buildings, we're down a little bit. So we'll go on and just go through. We'll expand a little bit of what's written here. So I did start with information technology just because it did have a fair size increase in it. One of the main increases is increase of annual licenses and contracted services. I just want to give a bit of an example we had one of our licenses come due after a couple of years, and it was $19,000, and when we renewed it, it was $36,000. So it's very tough to keep the costs down on that. Having said that, the IT department has spent a lot of time trying to look into other alternatives and that kind of thing. It does take a lot of work. It's not like other place where we get three quotes and we can just take it. They need to make sure that it fits into our network, fits into our security and that kind of thing. So there's a little bit of that. Also included a backup, which was $10,000. So there were some increases there that showed up. Again, this year, we are looking at our refresh programs. We're replacing 25 computers and monitors for 2026. We started that last year over a 5-year period. We're just trying to bring them up to date. As a computer gets up in age, they start to lose some of its security features and that kind of thing. So we want to make sure we have that. Also, you've seen the IT roadmap. We are still working on that. We did talk about some managed services. We are looking to implement a few managed services. Our overall model of IT right now, with our FT that we have in place is not, we feel like it's not quite sufficient. So we are looking at some other options. One of the options would be to look at hiring an IT admin technician, admin intern through NHFC or Venor, to give us a year to see if that a large model works to better for the corporation. IT is evolving all the time, and it's just we have to keep up with it. So it's basically what you're looking at in terms of costs. Policing, so policing was removed from corporate services and moved to outside charges. Just wanted to mention the policing outside charges also includes the board amount that's shown in there. It's $25,000 for 2026. The treasurer did mention the buildings, so both town hall and OPP buildings are now under the buildings topic under corporate services. In both those budgets, it's basically the maintenance of each of those buildings. Just an example for the town hall, we have a new water tank in, there's just lots of stuff that goes on through the year to look after that and different licenses and that kind of thing. So treasurer did have a decrease. Most of that is due to basically increased revenue in the form of investment returns. So last year, same conversation, rates were decreasing, so we dropped the amount of investment returns because we thought the rates were gonna keep going. They didn't keep going, they come back up a little bit. So that's the difference between the 2 years kind of thing, up there. Procurement risk management, a very small increase due to wage step increase in the cost of living. Human resources and health and safety, so we did have a fair increase there, increase in HR budget due to the return of the manager of HR services. So we were looking to get a contract last year, which usually ends up at a smaller wage and no benefits and that kind of thing. So that just that amount changes itself by $15,000 or $20,000. We also put some funds aside. So last year, if you remember, we did hire an HR consultant that we used throughout the year. I actually did a lot of the day-to-day HR items, and the HR consultant was able to do a lot of projects that we had kind of got behind on, one of which was to improve our health and safety and some other things. We do have some funds in the budget, $20,000 this year to allow that to continue. We still have some improvements and with myself and the CEO has some projects under HR that we'd like to do that. I didn't write it in here because it was in the clerk's budget. So the assistant program got moved over to this budget as well, which would have caused an increase to the amount as well. And then health and safety, we had a small decrease. We basically just put the courses on there. And I may even say now is possibly next year we just remove the health and safety and put it into HR and budget itself. So, up to any questions?
Okay, Councillor Ranger?
Just for clarification, where does the daycare building fall if it doesn't fall under you?
It actually falls under community services.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Dykens?
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure where this should be, so I just wanna put it out there. We have an election coming up, and I remember last time it took a while to get these because the budget for the next year doesn't get approved till April, whatever. Are these for the new council? Has that been considered for this budget or will it be next budget? Just,
No, sorry, just for clarification, what do you mean?
Okay, so there'll be a new council, that starts in January, whatever. They'll need
the
a
iPad.
tablet.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
They'll need a tablet. But our budget for 2027 won't get approved till April or whatever. I just wondered, is this the time we should be putting this in the budget for the next council? I don't know how that works.
Yep.
There is nothing in the budget for the next year. The incoming council will be using all the iPads around the table from the exiting council.
Okay, because I understood that after 4 years, they would be like outdated. So that was my mistake. I thought, okay, so these will be returned and then the new council. Perfect, thank you.
Okay, sorry, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Shallow?
Yeah, to you, your worship, to Director of Corporate Services, the OPP building, do we get revenue? Do we get rental revenue from that, or because, no, we don't, we can't get any from this building, but over there, I'm sure are we getting any rental revenue?
Yes, if you look at the actual budget, we show other revenue of $76,750 on an annual basis on there, same as last year, and that is the lease revenue that we get for
Which page are you on, Sean?
What's that?
Which page are you on?
Oh, sorry. 7 of 16.
Attachment,
That's our operating budget, sorry. Budget.
and you said
$87.
87?
Page 7.
Seven, thank you. No.
Sorry, page 7 of attachment 1.
Okay, okay,
There's so much we're careful to put page numbers on this year.
Right there.
right here.
Yeah.
There's your other.
Oh, other revenue,
Other revenue, okay.
Yeah.
that's OPP, right?
That's the lease payments that they make to us.
Okay, thank you.
That we can.
But you pay anyway.
Through the other lines.
Yeah.
Yes.
Subtract.
Yes. Any other questions for corporate services? None noted. All right, moving on. Thank you, sir. Item 4.1.3, fire and emergency services. This will be presented electronically.
Yes.
And we'll welcome Chief Earl Gregg. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. How are you this evening?
We're good.
Perfect. So the fire services budget for this year, there is a slight increase, 5.9% overall. As mentioned prior to, the 911 service costing has been transferred over to fire services. So that did increase our budget slightly overall. You will see another in the material and surplus line. There is a $99,000 increase, and that's for the 911, and also a large portion of that would be the auto extrication tools. So currently the tools, we're looking roughly 14 years old. With the modern technologies and vehicles, it's really hard to keep up with the new metals that they're using in vehicles, with ultra high strength steels. And tool failure is more current now with a tool that's outdated. The NFPA standard is roughly every 7 years is when we should be changing those tools over. So unfortunately, our tools were about 13 years old now. And the cost of the tools were almost $60,000. So that's why there was such an increase in the material and supplies line in my budget. You can see the labor related costs. They've come up slightly. Again, we have a retirement. We've now gone to the full complement of 12 firefighters. So it's reflective with the modest increase. But overall, like I said, the biggest thing was the two line items that we were looking at this year in our budget line. The contracted services, again, it's up slightly. It's just a rising cost. Equipment starting to get a little older, starting to get a little bit more labor time involved. So that's why our contracted services are gone up a bit. But overall, we've tried to keep it as tight as we could. Next slide, please. So again, it's the overall requirements for the operations. Like I said, the AutoX tools are a big driver. The tires on the fire trucks, unfortunately, they haven't been looked after in the past. So again, but driven back to the standards, we should be changing those tires every 7 years. We currently have a truck that has original tires from 97. So again, that's another big dollar item that we looked at this year that we need to replace vehicle tires. And unfortunately, we have about 16 tires to replace. So it's driving our costs up. That's why we're a little higher than the average. So we hit about 5.9%. And cancer prevention, again, it's a great thing that we're being well aware of cancer prevention. The unfortunate side is the industry, they're charging more money. So the same set of gear we got 2 years ago, now we're looking at about 14 to 18% increase in the same piece of equipment as we were a year and a half, 2 years ago. And again, we're still replacing outdated and worn out equipment. And it's unfortunate that we're still at that point, but it's it's a lot of critical pieces of equipment that are not readily available, and with the tariffs, a lot of it's made in the States, and that's really, really taken a hit in the fire service. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer anything I can.
Thank you so much. Councillor Ranger?
I think you threw it down there. Can you go to the first thing, the budget? Please? It's more for the public, and under labor and related expenditures, we added 2 new firefighters, and we're looking to improve overtime and costs related to that. I think we see a very minimal increase in labor and related costs. And is this one of the reasons why is because we're back at a full complement and won't hopefully be seeing so much overtime and other costly expenses when we have vacancies?
That's what we're trying for, as well as we have a retirement this year. So we're going to retire a senior member that's at the top of the pay scaling, and we're replacing them with a junior member. So it's about 2/3 of their actual wage that we're replacing. But yes, overall, with a full complement of staff, we can minimize overtime. Last year, we ran into a rash of probably 4 or 5 injuries that resulted in time off. And with that time off, it negates people being allowed to use their vacation time and holidays. So we did incur overtime for that. So as long as we have a full, healthy crew, then we should be able to minimize the overtime.
Thank you.
Councillor Shava, Councillor Dickens, Councillor Owen.
Very good question to you, your worship, to the treasurer. The labor related and related with probably benefits, right?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Councillor Dickens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just wondering, do we have access to actuals? Like, I know it's a budget 2025 and 2026, but do we have actuals for, because we never did get a financial report in 2020.
Through Madam Mayor, habit.
Yeah.
They're not, I'm working on them. My software is now working, which provides me the ability to do this type of presentation. So there will be on the next agenda, there will be 2025 year-to-date actuals that you can all review. I'll also put the 2024 actuals and the 2025 budget on that worksheet, so you'll have something to look at. I will warn you now, I'll remind you again next week, that we're 3 weeks after year end. There is an awful lot of adjustments that happen, and we haven't even got all our invoices in yet. You've heard me say that before. And there's other adjustments, across the departments, across the different pieces of our puzzle. So, those numbers are very much tentative early numbers. They will change, but they'll be available at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Owen.
Yes, through your worship, I certainly would never question any equipment purchases, and yes, fire trucks do need tires that are about to go flat. And the equipment, that's all good, but administration and this is not just related to the fire department, this is related to all departments. I don't understand what administration and other are. Like, we're talking $94,000 in administration and others. So I'd like an explanation of that, because if there was a place to cut, I would think it would be in that section. It would. So maybe after I hear the explanation, I'll say, no, I was wrong, but I don't understand how we spend that much money.
Okay, so like a bunch of the departments, admin and other kind of has a very broad range of things we're covering. Insurance, Licenses, permits, travel, training. Trying to think of some other things that are under there. Insurance is often the biggest number in some departments.
Sorry, Madam Clerk.
I believe food and beverages are under there too.
Yeah, sorry, I would characterize that as travel. Yeah, but yeah.
Oh, okay, travel, yeah.
Advertising. So I'm just going through each line here in front of me.
Legal.
Legal, yes, thank you, which in some departments is significantly more than others, depending on the breakdown. Those are I guess, the major pieces of it.
Follow up, yeah.
When we get the reports on training, it's usually every time we get them, the number of training hours are not used. So would it be possible to cut that portion of the budget down? Because in the reports we get, then they're not being, the number of hours of training available is not being used.
If I could, Madam Mayor, through you, with the training hours that are allocated, so it is a bulk pool that we allocate. But if we're doing a specialized course where we need, as you know, mandatory certifications coming up in another 4 months. So last year we really pushed the 4 courses that we needed to get to mandatory certification for all our staff, including our volunteers. So the costing for the courses, it was allocated in our training time and funding, but the problem was the hours weren't used by all the members. So if you broke it down to who used the course time and who didn't, your course time would still go way up in dollar value. The money was still spent. It's just how you're allocating the time out for the dollar value. Does that clarify it?
That's fine. I'm just looking for, I don't care whether I'm saving pennies or dollars, I'm looking for the savings, so.
Absolutely.
Anything further on the fire department from members of council? Nothing noted? Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you very much, Director and Chief. To item 4.1.4, Public Works Department, including operation for water and wastewater. This will be presented virtually as well by Director Stefan Forte.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councilors. This presentation highlights the main pressures driving the budget for Public Works. We're seeing more failures in our aging water, road, and stormwater systems, which do create unplanned repair costs and diverts us away from scheduled maintenance. Next slide, please. Material and fuel prices continue to rise, and even with efficiencies, we're paying significantly more for the core supplies needed to maintain our infrastructure. Regulatory requirements are also growing, especially around environmental reporting and water safety, adding administrative workload and some specialized support needs. And finally, winter operations remain one of our biggest cost drivers. We're seeing more freeze-thaw cycle, heavier storms, and longer season, which do increase costs for salt, equipment wear, and overtime. Together, these factors explain the presented budget this year for Public Works, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Members of council. Councilor Owen.
Through you, Worship, and this is just a clarification. Streetlights, $101,000. I'd like an explanation of what, I mean, that can't be just replacing bulbs. So I'd like an explanation of what that entails.
Director, are you frozen, I think?
Yeah.
It's not moving.
It
I
appears
wouldn't
that.
ask the question, I thought I was gonna do that.
Sorry, I'll step in for a second. I think the biggest part of that is the utilities associated with the streetlights.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure of the exact line items.
Oh, there we go.
He's back. There we go. On page 12 of the operating budget, there's a breakdown. You'll see utilities. It's more than half the budget. And the contracted services are typically the electrical contractors in town, and we call them out to fix things. So,
Sorry, Director, I don't know if you're.
I apologize, I lost connection and it reconnected.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I don't know, how much you lost. During that, Councillor Owen put forth a question regarding the amount of 101 for the streetlights, and then the, treasurer did offer up the explanation, of course, of utilities and contracted services. So I don't know if you have anything to add.
Thank you, Treasurer, for your answer.
Perfect, done deal. Any other questions regarding public works or water wastewater at this time? None noted, we must be getting tired.
Well, I have one.
Oh, perfect, Councillor Shabbat.
It's not a little question, but it's your worship, we see numbers like this, it's nice to see the waste, the numbers gone down from 721 to 536,000. So I don't know what happened there. And we generated less waste, but other than that, I'm happy. Recycling, well, that's good to see that. Yeah, smaller numbers are good.
True.
Yeah.
and that's driven primarily by the fact we don't do
Yeah, that's,
recycling.
yes, that's what I figured out. That's good.
Any other questions or comments from members of council on public works? Okay, perfect, thank you, Director, for moving on. 4.1.5, Tech Pioneer residents, and this will be, oh, sorry, I'm jumping right over waste and wastewater, you know. Okay. Sorry, Director.
For water and wastewater, the key driver behind this year's increase is relate to maintaining reliable service and meeting regulatory obligations. First, our rate adjustments are designed to support long-term asset renewal. Stable funding is essential for ongoing water main replacements, equipment upgrades, and other lifecycle needs across both systems. Second, our infrastructure is aging, as we all know, and more components in the distribution and collection network are reaching the end of their service life. Breaks, blockages, and valve failures are occurring more often, which increases reactive maintenance costs and labor. Third, regulatory expectations continue to rise, from water quality sampling and operational testing to training and certification standards. Meeting these requirements demands more staff time and at times specialized support. Finally, energy and chemical costs continue to increase. Water treatment and wastewater pumping are energy intensive, and higher hydro and chemical prices add pressure to the operating budgets. These factors together explain the adjustments presented in this year's water and wastewater budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions specific to wastewater and water from members of council? Councillor Owens.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. Water and wastewater has to be self-sustaining. We cannot use money out of our tax revenue. This is a service that it's a user pay for service. So when we increase the rates, it's because we have to sustain the system as we have it. I also would like to remind residents that we still have pipes in the ground that are 85 years old. And when we talk about an aging system, I don't think those pipes should be beyond 25 years old. I'm just guessing at that. Our director would know better. But 85 years is well beyond end of life. So that's part of the reason that we have increased leakage in our system. It's part of the reason that we have so many water main breakages in this town. And now we are playing catch up to try and get the system so that we won't have these unnecessary costs. The other thing with water and wastewater is there's so many provincial regulations in terms of qualifications. And I'll give you an example. To join two water pipes together in the ground, you need special qualifications. You can't just be a laborer. You can put the pipes down. You can put them together under supervision of someone who's qualified. But I mean, that's a pretty simple procedure to join pipes together. Under provincial regulations, you have to have special qualifications. And that in the end costs us money. But that in the end provides us with safe drinking water. And that's very important.
Thank you for that. Anything further from members of council? Okay, so now we can move on to item 4.1.5, Tech Pioneer residents, and this will be presented by Director Tanya Schumacher. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well.
Nobody said good evening, better.
Gotta wake everybody up.
Yeah.
So you can see that there's actually a cost savings from last year. So less of an overspend from last year. So we did quite a deep dive into how things were coded and ensuring things were coded in the correct buckets that we're utilizing all the ministry funding that we should be using. So that is primarily the difference in those two years. For contracted services, there's a significant cash savings from last year to this year. It is related to specifically one service with a decrease in hours that does not impact resident care or outcomes. We are fully staffed in that department with people that can do those programs. The cost savings was discussed with the contracted service provider, and they were okay with that. There will be no impact to residents. A $57,000 savings. So most of our costs and our issues are related to wages. So we have approximately 147 to 153 employees. That is 147 taxpayers. We are meeting the 4 hours of care, so that's a mandated requirement, and staffing levels need to kind of meet that. So there's a mandate for 4 hours for nursing, which includes RN, RPN, PSW, and then a 36 minutes per day for allied staffing, which includes life enrichment, restorative dietary, physiotherapy, those kind of things. So we are achieving both those targets, which is pretty good. Permanent wage enhancement will continue to be fully funded by the ministry. And you can see it's not an insignificant amount of money. It's nearly $300,000. Like I spoke to you about, most of our issues are related to staffing. So over 2025, we had 50 staff members over the course of the 365 days of the year on some kind of leave. 3 on long-term disability, 31 on short-term disability, 21 of which are full-time. So we run a 24/7 operation where we care for people. Those hours just don't go unfilled. This is where we run into increased sick time costs, increased overtime costs, training costs to bring in new staff, all of those things. So we've worked really hard over the course of probably the last 6 months to bring in a primary care staffing model, which ensures that there is sufficient staffing, equal distribution of tasks and residents for the staff, decreasing workload, improving morale, decreasing sick time. We've implemented a psychological health and safety program, or we're in the implementation of a psychological health and safety program. Those things we anticipate will improve mental health, health and wellness in the organization, improve workloads, improve teamwork, all of those things in turn to improve sick time, overtime use. You'll see that in the next slide, we spent almost $300,000 in overtime costs in 2024. And it was, Jen, can you go back a slide? 225,000 for 2025. So I believe that the things that we've already put in place are showing positive results. Moving to the primary model of care is allowing staff less physical labor while they do a very labor intensive. It's changed how work is being done, and we're seeing the benefits of those things already. So we anticipate that those will continue to improve. And then see less STD claims, less LTD claims, all of those things. Next slide, Jen, please. We had a look at where we were spending money on overtime that potentially we didn't have to spend money on overtime. We've put letters of understanding in place with unions for people who work a Monday to Friday. So they are not being paid overtime to work stats and then banking a separate holiday. So instead of being paid twice, they are only paid once. So an approximate $10,000 cost savings annually for that. And for the stats repayment or the banking of a stat, there's about a $15,000 savings annually. Shift premiums and those kind of things are negotiated through collective agreements. We have very little control over that. And in keeping with that thought, ONA is our union representing the RNs in the building. They will be going to negotiation in April. We've finally gotten a date for negotiations. Their contract expired last March. So we're a year behind. CUPE will go to negotiations in the fall of this year. We have no idea what the impact of what they're asking for wage increases will be. We have entered a 3% just as a placeholder. Just some stats, how much we spend on vacation time, how much stats cost us. When we look at consultant services, that was the thing I was talking about, the $57,000 saving. That is one consultant that saved us those kind of funds. Without impact to the residents, because we didn't want to change outcomes, change any processes. But using the allied dollars to bump up that staffing, that 36 minutes of staffing allowed us to kind of drop the consultant costs down. So using our staff to do the programs versus a consultant to do the programs. We moved our IPAC position from an ONA position to a non-union position. It's a cost neutral switch from one to another. With no impact, but that position is much more effective outside of a union. There are requirements to discipline, provide re-education and those kind of things that don't necessarily kind of go along with what's written in collective agreements. So that was a good move. And we've seen really great improvements in our IPAC program, having it outside of the union. Review of materials and supplies. All of our nursing supplies, much like every other department, have increased. Our incontinence supplies have increased. We do belong to a third-party long-term care buying group that is at no cost to us. And it gives us the best price for all of those things: nursing supplies, wound care supplies, food, incontinence supplies. So we will continue with that since we get the best cost available. And we are waiting for the final report from Optimus SBR to determine where they have noted efficiencies and any further cost savings. The only other thing I'd like to mention is that the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care follows the provincial budget, which will not be tabled until April 1st. So there potentially is additional funding that will come to us through the provincial budget. So that's all. Anyone has any questions?
Councillor Ranger?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I also would like to highlight, as somebody who sits on the board, that TPR also hasn't needed to or hasn't pursued contract nursing, which has significantly saved monies. So when you look at these dollar amounts of overtime and people who are vacancies, they have figured out a way to not have to, so far, access third-party nursing, which I think is something to highlight.
Excellent point. Anything further from members of council regarding TPR? Councillor Shala?
Yeah, to you, your worship, the director, what is LOA? LOA, is there a training cost of 189,969.86 impact of staff turnover and additional staff to cover LOAs?
Leaves of absence.
That's what I think of, but I don't know.
Anything
That's
further? That's good. Anything members from other members of council? Nothing noted. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll move on to 4.1.6. Development and Enterprise Service Departments, and we'll now be joined with Director Labrador. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to all of the council. Just wait for. Oh, you're good. I come to you with our budget from our small but mighty Development Enterprise Services team for 2026, with an 8% decrease for this year, and I'll go through some key items. The overall is that we've spent 2025 honing in on necessary training that our key staff have relied, or the department has relied on contracted services for several years. So in both planning services and building services, we have seen some great strides in our certifications with our staff, which is going to calculate to some decreases in contracted services moving forward. This is a huge step for the town to rely less on contracted services moving forward, and we're really happy to be in this position now as we are seeing some large growth opportunities and current state growth. My department's in a very interesting category because we are revenue generating. So both have seen increases in planning services and building services revenues. In 2025, our all construction value reached an all-time high of $34 million in increased construction in the town of Kirkland Lake. To put that into perspective, that's about a $25 million increase over 2024. So we are seeing some large revenue from these projects, and we'll, from my 2026 budget, you'll see that there are increases that will be flowing forward. There is an increased overall building services budget related to the needs to grow the division to meet the demands. I think that's a great position to be in because the revenues will help us in those categories. And then the largest increase for us was the introduction of the MAT tax for economic development and tourism. That not only will translate into revenues from our economic development reserve that can really offset costs, and you'll see in a couple of areas some transfers and reserves to offset the budget for my department is directly coming from those reserves to really offset the numbers. And we're really hoping that in 2026 we can use the efficiencies that we've been working on to see greater stable numbers from my department moving forward. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to help.
Any questions from members of council regarding, yes, yeah. Yes. Councillor Dykens.
To you, Madam Mayor, to the director, just for clarity, you said there was an increase of $25 million in what?
All construction value,
Okay.
total construction value.
Okay.
Anything else from members of council for this department? All sunshine and rainbows. All righty, moving on. Item 4.1.7, Community Services Department. We're gonna have this presented by Director Kim Clocker. Thank you very much. Welcome.
It's past my bedtime. I've scratched out a lot of my notes just so as short as possible. All right, so Community Services Department is presenting a conservative operating budget this year, looking at an overall decrease of 1.9% from last year. Cemetery services, it's a legislative responsibility, and our budget for 2026 is close to a break even. Right now, we are finalizing an internal operational review for cemetery operations, which will allow the continuity of the service while maintaining cost effectiveness. The town owns the childcare facility located on Queen Street, but no longer operates the childcare service. Leasing this building does bring in revenue for the town. And in turn, the manager of Parks, Recreation, and Building Services helps to maintain and do servicing and repairs to that building. The library is a outside agency that was already presented tonight. And for Meet the Museum, looking at a 100% decrease from last year as the town no longer operates the Museum of Northern History. And lastly, the Parks and Recreation division is showing a 2.1% decrease in the budget, despite significant cost pressures. So you can go to the next slide, Jen. So some of these pressures include wage increases for both union and non-union staff. And as a reminder, we have 5 full-time managers, 9 full-time unionized staff, 36 part-time staff, and 6 seasonal staff, just in Parks, Recreation, and Facility division. Increased vacation and backfilling. So we have a lot of long-serving employees, which is fantastic, but those people have accrued quite a bit of vacation, and we do need to backfill. Significant increases in utilities, so approximately 8% increase in our utilities for 2026, and a projected cost of insurance to be close to $260,000 for all of our facilities. Rising materials and supply costs is another big one. So for example, I received a letter from our supplier for janitorial products, which we use every day. The one product alone went up almost 11%. So that is a significant increase. And in Parks and Rec alone, we have 50 revenue lines to predict. So forecasting that can be very complex, pun intended. So we're always on the hunt for cost savings, funding opportunities, and we try to offer programs that are either self-funded or sponsored by our amazing business community. So we achieved budget reductions this year, largely through significant cuts to materials and supplies. So this was not the year for discretionary spending. We did a large cut in material and supplies line item.
In 2026, we are addressing some major operational challenges, including pool roof issues, some heaving at Civic Park on the path, and ongoing vandalism in parks and facilities. I also wanted to highlight a new operational pressure that emerged after I created the 2026 budget. So we are experiencing a challenge in maintaining a consistent temperature in the leisure pool. To properly investigate this root cause, rather than continue with temporary fixes, we did receive preliminary costs from a contractor, the one who originally helped build the pool. And that is estimated to be approximately $11,000 to be drawn from working capital reserve. And that can come in our report to council at a later time, but I did want to give you the notice of that. In 2025, our department applied for 18 grants and successfully secured approximately $50,000 in addition to the major projects that we have funded through Green and Inclusive Community Building Fund and NOHFC. Because this is a good time to also highlight what our budget dollars go to. In 2025, we delivered over 4,000 hours of direct programming. We rented over 2,000 hours of facility spaces. We maintained 21 facilities, including parks and playgrounds. We sold over 1,100 memberships to families, adults, seniors, and students, and we saw over 80,000 visits to the Joe Mavernack Community Complex. The complex was open 354 days last year, including some holidays such as Family Day, Thanksgiving, and Remembrance Day. And lastly, with the support of many dedicated volunteers, we're able to partner with individuals and organizations to deliver programs, events, leagues, such as pickleball, tennis, ball hockey, road races, soccer, skating, hockey, and softball. And volunteers also play a critical role in maintaining some of our community recreation assets, such as the 9 kilometers of ski trails, 8 kilometers of snowshoe trails, the Reese Fillion Loose Parts Playground, Rotary Park, the outdoor rink, and duck pond in Swastika. So having these volunteer groups really helps reduce costs for our department. Lastly, we are fortunate to have strong support from local businesses that help sponsor free swims, skates, and fitness classes. We really are committed to offering free and low-cost recreation opportunities to make sure that recreation remains inclusive and accessible to everyone. And that concludes my presentation for tonight, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilor Ranger.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm asking on behalf of the public, is there going to be any status update to the vacant old pool area in 2026?
Yes, we will see a report coming forward. We've been collecting a lot of information from the public, organizations, from the time the new pool was created in terms of what they'd like to see with that space. So that will be brought forward to council. Thank you, very exciting.
Councilor Owen.
Cemetery. Our losses have decreased significantly. Is that because we're predicting more people my age are gonna die, or? Anyways, could you please, could you explain the difference? And I'm not planning on dying anytime soon.
Okay.
I'll take a run. So the cemeteries essentially run at a break even. The reason, it's not because we have more usage, although that's probably in our future. So that little tongue in cheek as I get older as well. But we're able to draw some of the interest revenue that the trust funds generate. So every time we sell a plot or a niche, so that money gets put into a trust fund account. The interest, we're allowed to draw on some of the interest that earns to help fund the operations. So essentially, we're budgeting, for break even or something close to that. It moves around because we, even though we're aging, we can't really predict what we're selling. Much like the rest of Kim's budget, it's just a very difficult thing to kind of estimate.
We use a 3-year average.
Yeah, so basically, we're kind of using a non-reserve reserve. In other words, it's not a reserve fund, but it's money generated.
It's a trust fund that we're not allowed to touch except for in this very limited circumstance. It's just a recognition that, as an organization that incurs the cost of very expensive costs of both setting up the cemetery and maintaining it, that, some of that interest revenue can be used to fund the operations.
Thank you.
Anything further from members of council for this director? We are moving on. We have been at it for another 2 hours. We are almost at the end of this. Do we just want to keep going, or do we want to take a 5-minute walk around, get a drink? Perfect, we're gonna just proceed. Excellent. Item 4.1.8, capital budgets including water, wastewater, and this will be presented again by the treasurer. And this is attachments 2 and 3.
You will see, the biggest change that you see is that we're gonna have 3-year capital budget. I'm gonna focus most of my attention on 26 capital. And, there's some very good information, there's descriptions that were given to you. This is very, very, pretty much the same thing, presentation as we've done in the past. There's levels on the far right, which give you an idea of how they've been characterized by state of the asset and the risks associated with not replacing it. So you have some more information about that. How they're funded are broken out in those various columns. You mentioned, again, here's the trucks that we talked about earlier. I do want to point one thing out here that was just a hard thing to kind of identify what's going on with it. So we have a pumper truck. It's, to replace a brand new pumper truck is $1.5 million. It's not, the fire department's been tasked to try and find a used fire truck. So it's in here as debt at this point. But the reality is we're hoping to take advantage of it like we did in the past when we had to replace a pumper truck. We're trying to source something that isn't brand new at $1.5 million. So that, and the reality of that is, you notice in the 26 budget, if we had to fall back and buy a pumper truck, which would of course come to council because of the nature of the presentation here, we're not getting it in 26. I think if I'm not mistaken, it was 18 months is the order timeline. And that's in a very good scenario. So it takes 1.5 years just to actually buy one. So anyways, I just wanted to point it out because it looks a little bit odd. It's not, it's not part of our normal presentation. Just to be clear about it. So within the groups, you can see we're spending quite a bit in public works and water and wastewater. So Duncan Avenue, you're well aware of, it came before council, work that's going to be done down here on the corner. The water main relining was delayed a year, but it's on the agenda again this year. So that's going to improve, many facets of that area of town, and it's a new program for us. We're going to see if we can kind of, rather than digging up every foot of ground that we have to replace, the 85-year-old pipes, if there's something we can do that'll be more cost effective. So 2027, 2028, there's again details there. There's not descriptions. You directors could answer your questions if you're concerned about any particular item on that. It's much the same presentation. Tax levy is similar levels to what we're looking at right now. And you see it again, it's dominated by the big ticket items. Aqua is always on the list. There's always equipment and repairs that have to be done at the 2 plants that they're responsible for, the water and the wastewater plants. So they'll always be there at big numbers. At this point, I guess we'd be happy to any discussion, questions.
Thank you for that. Before opening the table, just because this is a new request, and something that we don't normally get, the whole reason why I felt it important to put the capital budgets forward facing is because we need to balance what we want to take out of 2026 to save tax levy and balance it with what we know is coming down the pipes. So we can see what is going to be the demands or possibly be the demands, because it is like any other document, a fluid document. We don't know what emergencies may happen between now and 2028, but at least we can look at what we know will be coming in the next 2 years. So I think that's just important. It's an important piece to factor in when we're thinking about what we're going to deliver in 2026. So that was my thought process kind of behind,
If I could step into that for a second.
yeah, absolutely.
Keep in mind, so internally, we've already adopted a mindset where we're basically skipping a year or two on very large projects. And that's to help replenish the reserves and reserve funds. The reality is we can't run $5-10 million of project every year, you know, with our resources. So you'll see like 27 is substantially less than 6 and 8, and that's just because of the big projects. Obviously, we'll try and take advantage of any funding that we can, if it comes our way, but the way it's laid out right now. Yeah, so. Art here is brought up the fact, so keeping with your comment about reserves, so we're using $9 million of reserves. Now, when I say reserve, some of that's what, you know, accountants call deferred revenue, but the ministry.
Some of that's funded.
Yeah, sorry. So I'll go back to my warning or heads up that I gave much earlier this evening, is that those reserves are bottomless, and we're quickly approaching the bottom at this point. We've tried to put some plans into place, such as skipping years on major projects to try and replenish them. But, you know, the idea that we can just pick and choose a reserve and drop it in here to pay for things, I think that day is pretty much gone. Obviously, when we have windfalls like the WSIB, we'll take advantage of it. WSIB is capital in nature, it's more operating, but it's a good example that when we see windfalls, we'll take advantage of them, whether it's funding or refunds or whatever. But again, my warning is, you know, the reserves and reserve funds are getting quickly down to a level where we would need to maintain some for both the operating purposes, but especially for capital. You know, you never really know what the next thing that could go boom is and how much it's going to cost. And we want to be prepared for it, you know. So worst case scenarios, but some common sense in that process.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments? Councillor Kylie?
Through you, your worship. I'm a senior, so maybe I'm missing something here. The Swastika wastewater plant roof repairs. I thought we were getting out of the use of that building.
Yes and no. At this point, we're not. We have a pump. We have a pump which is part of the new, the whole system we did to move the sewage from Swastika. So we still have a very large pump there that needs to be protected while we're using it. I think in the long term, the plan is to get rid of the building entirely, but at this point, we're not ready to do that. We need that pump to keep the flow of sewage moving.
Okay, Councillor Owen and then Councillor Ranger.
Okay, to you, your worship. I see, plow truck, you know, I think 2000, is that something we get through our new lease program, or is that something that we purchase?
Yeah, so, my answer is I'm not 100% sure. We're actually asking them right now how big a vehicle they'll put in the program. I'm guessing no, but we're not sure, 100% sure yet. We'll know actually very soon.
Okay, and I,
Yeah.
Yeah, I obviously didn't have a good handle on what the lease program was all about, and that's my bad, I guess. I have a number of questions for Tech Pioneer, because I don't understand what a lot of these pieces of equipment are. They have interesting names, but
They do, and they have interesting jobs.
Can I just make the one comment to understand? You know, in Tanya's world,
Yeah.
there's a bucket of funding to replace capital. So you'll see that those are all funded by government funding. So I just want to.
oh, okay, well, then in that case.
If you don't want to know what they are, you don't care.
Well, you know, I don't know what, like, when I think of auto scrubber, I think of a big chimney at a refinery.
So an auto scrubber is actually a machine that cleans the floors.
Oh, cool. Hydrocorrelator.
If you've ever gone to a physio department and you get a moist hot pack, That's what it comes out of.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tornado flusher, that's a really good name, I gotta know what that.
It's a dishwasher for urinals and bed pans.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Can I introduce you? I'm all for the learning experience, but this has been, like you pointed out, it's been a long meeting, it's 8:10. In the interest, can we concentrate on stuff that's gonna actually cost the taxpayers money?
I appreciate the sentiment. I do. We have committees of the whole to allow for further discussion. We don't get the opportunity very often. We can really center perhaps what is in the interest of, I'm really interested in finding this out versus I believe this is something that all members of the public need to know.
Okay, I'm done.
It's at your discretion.
No, I'm finished, I've asked my questions.
Okay. Okay, Councilor Ranger.
Great, thank you through you, Madam Mayor. It's gonna sound counterintuitive to what our finance director has said, but things will not get cheaper over time. They're only going to get more expensive. And my concern is the more we push back on big ticket items, the more we won't be able to afford them in the future any more than we're gonna have to tighten our belts now. So that is how I will be looking at these line items and cost concerns as things are not getting completed in our 4-year mandate. And we do have some reserves. I need to consider that things will not, cost of paving isn't gonna get cheaper. We are seeing the cost of chemicals and other janitorial utilizations of day-to-day things are not getting cheaper. We are not going to save the town any future monies by not spending what we need to spend now in order to improve the quality of things that we're responsible within the municipality. And that's, I'm done.
So, fair comment, I guess, just to, you guys have been buried in the asset management plan now for basically all of your term. It's a bit of a mix of what hasn't been done and what should be done and what's coming. The reality is we just don't have the resources to kind of hit it all. So this is very much a compromise type of scenario where we try and pick and choose the things that we think are more important than others. It could turn out we pick wrong. You don't know when something's gonna go, you mentioned it already, something's gonna go sideways. If we had more resources and, the asset management plan does envision that getting better, it's a much longer term than what you guys see as counselors. It should get better, but you're not wrong. It increased, the asset management plan increased by over $300 million last year for us. And that was driven by, the sewage project and stuff like that. It's always gonna get much bigger. And I think reality is we're always gonna be picking and choosing winners and losers. And to the best of our ability anyways. It's an unfortunate part of, 70 years of, I wouldn't call it neglect, but different priorities.
Councilor Owen?
Yeah, in the community service department, I'm just looking at Civic Park Pavilion snow stops, $20,000 at taxpayer expense. I'm just wondering, is that being contracted out or is it possible that we could do that in-house and save money that way?
Yep, the director will join us at the table to answer that.
To Councillor Owen, yeah, we would, we are planning on getting that contracted out purely due to the height of the roof at Civic. Over the outdoor rink, yeah, they have specialized equipment and probably special licenses as well to be on roof that magnitude that height.
Thank you.
Councilor Ranger?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to add to when you're over a certain feet, you need special certifications, and this would cost us additional money for potentially a minimal amount of use. So I can see, the cost of the lift and the certifications for the actual people doing the work, being subcontracted and then things.
Anything further from members of council? Presentation. Okay, so we've reached the end. I did want to note that, and it's funny that I wrote it down earlier, our team of council and staff members are usually exceptional at being professional and sticking to the formality of regular council meetings. So I just wanted to say how enjoyable it was to kind of see our personalities kind of shine through in committee of the whole, where we're a little bit more relaxed and we can have maybe a little bit more fun with each other. So it was very enjoyable. Councillor Owen.
When I was going through the budget stuff on the computer, I had like black or dark lines through sections of what was on my screen on the stuff with the orange background. And I couldn't read, in a number of places, I couldn't read what was behind that. So I'm just suggesting maybe next time we try not to be so fancy and just put the type down.
Sorry.
I mean,
Was
it
there a
did-
particular dot, like it was?
All of them, all of them.
On the orange,
All of them.
So it
anything
didn't,
with
it
the
didn't
orange
run out of
background.
colors.
Yeah.
Well,
I
you
thought
have
it was
a
just my
visor.
color vision, but apparently I guess it was an
All
issue.
of them.
Just a point to ponder, if something like that happens, like an IT issue, just email, I usually email Alan. And then, yeah, well, I usually CC you, yeah. One of the two of them will take care of things. This is what I've learned over the last 3 years. Yes. So thank you for that. That being said, I will have Madam Clerk read the recommendation. I read the recommendation. All right. Okay, so the recommendation moving forward is the committee recommend that all outstanding questions on the 2026 mayor's budget and 3-year capital plan be answered and presented by the treasurer at the February 10th, 2026 special meeting of council prior to the deliberations on the floor. And finally, that procedure be lifted for the February 10th special council meeting if required to allow members of council to present motions on the floor directly in relation to the 2026 mayor's budget and 3-year capital plan, if so desired. Any concerns with that direction? This will be the direction moving forward. And that concludes the January 27th committee of the whole meeting. So I'm going to move back into regular meeting to finish us off. Do I need a motion to rise?
No.
Okay.
We're in recess.
Yes. So now we're going to rise from recess and move to item number 9, members' motions. There are none.
We haven't read the recommendation from the 8 point.
Sorry. Skipping pages. Yes, please, Madam Clerk.
Moved by Councillor Janice Rinker, seconded by Councillor Patrick Tybee. Be it resolved that report number 2026 Corp 003 entitled 2026 Mayor's Budget and 3-year Capital Plan be received for information. That a public meeting be held in relation to the 2026 Mayor's Budget and 3-year Capital Plan as presented on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026 at 4:50 p.m. And finally, that a special meeting be held on February 10th to allow for deliberations for members of council on the 2026 Mayor's Budget and 3-year Capital Plan as presented.
All in favor? None noted. Item carried unanimous. Thank you for that. Now we're moving on to number 9. Members' motions. There are none, as there was a second ago. Item number 10, readings and consideration of bylaws. There are none. Item number 11, are there any notices of motion that council want to bring forward to give staff a heads up? Nothing noted. Item number 12, council reports and committees of council, local and regional board updates. Anything, members of council? None. Item number 13, proclamations and recognitions. There are also none this evening. Item number 14, additional information in mayor's provincial policy matters. There are none this evening. closed session, there is none this evening. Recommendations for matters of closed session, there are none. Number 17, notice of reconsideration. Does any member of council wish to have any matter decided at this council meeting reconsidered? None. Item number 18, confirmation bylaw number 26-009, confirming proceedings, moved by Councillor Dykens, seconded by Councillor Shaba.
Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time, numbered, passed, signed, and sealed. Bylaw number 2609, being the council at its special meeting held on Tuesday, January 27, 2026.
All in favor? Opposed? None noted. Item carried unanimous. I move for the adjournment, seconded by Councillor Dykens. Thank you very much, one and all. It's